for Monday, April 30th to order and open the public hearing. Brenda?
Good morning. This public hearing is being held to hear from anyone that may be affected by the proposed amendment to the city's zoning bylaw. Amendment bylaw number 4376 proposes to rezone unit number 5 of the property located at 11612 8th Street from C2 Commercial General Zone to C5 Commercial Neighborhood Pub Zone. And there were no comments received regarding the notice.
Thank you. So I'll call for any comments for a first time. Councillor Wilbur?
I just have one. I did talk to staff about it, but I just wanted it put out there for public record. How does it work for parking? Is there going to be an issue around parking?
So through your worship, I'll just ask Alex to answer that question.
Through your worship, so the current businesses in the building need 14 stalls. With the pub going in, that's a total of 22 stalls, so that's 36 in total. There's 40 stalls available. That's minus the enclosure of BC assessment, so that's not including BC assessment. Perfect.
And further through your worship, the hours of operation will be somewhat different as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. For a second time, any comments or questions? And for a third time, any comments? Thank you. We'll close the public hearing. And at this time, I'd like to call our regular meeting of City Council with the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. I can't start the meeting, obviously, without expressing our sincere condolences and thoughts to the residents in the City of Toronto and the horrific tragedy they experienced a week ago now, I think it was, and obviously those tragedies that impact of such magnitude impact all of us. I think you can't help but want to extend our sincere thoughts and prayers to those affected directly and indirectly, and on behalf of Council, we want to do that this morning. So our first order of business this morning, new Councillor Business, Councillor Parslow, 2.1.
Yeah, may I? I've got many items. Can I go with the?
Yeah, go.
Those first. Yeah. Okay. Many of us manned the city booth at the Kiwanis trade show, and on Sunday I interacted with 11 people, which is not a great number I would expect to interact with, but there were a number of issues raised. One observation is that people do not want to get involved with the fiscal gap issue, at least the sampling that I dealt with on the Sunday. They feel it's complex and it's something that they expect Council to be knowledgeable about and dealing with it. So I'm just offering that as an observation. I shared one or two of these things with Mayor. Expression of concern about the cumulative impact of different increases over time to utilities, waste pickup and so on. And illustrative of that cumulative impact in an 11-year time span, a person's bi-monthly billing has gone from $70 to over $200. People on fixed income. Just another interesting comment which I'd like to supplement by reading from a message I got yesterday. This was an advert. This was sent to me by a constituent, and it was, this is a quotation from a Facebook ad. I have a furnished crew house available immediately. Willing to do short term. Please contact me for more information. Now, the concerns, we've talked about concerns about these sort of places, and it's on our diary of things to do. And I did talk to staff last night about this, and these are the questions that I was asked at the Kiwanis trade show, and now I'm asked here in this message here. How is it possible to license a commercial motel / crew house in a residential area. Now, I think the assumption there is that as this is a business, they must have a business license, right? Are these people under the same bylaws and fire codes as other commercial operations? Now, I notice Councillor Wilbur nodding her head. Yeah, we've talked about these things, and it's on the diary, and I think staff is looking to, once the OCP is finalized, about the rezoning and addressing it then. Is that fair comment, fair summary of what the plan is?
So, through your worship, I understand this has been on the diary for a while, and it found its way onto the diary with the intent that when we worked our way through the OCP and we updated those zoning bylaws, at that point we would be addressing it through either the OCP or the zoning. And yeah, that's my understanding of the intent. Now, as far as the OCP itself and that process, we've sent that to the ALC. We still need to go to RFP or tender for somebody to update those bylaws for us, and so we're a ways away from having an updated bylaw in front of council at this point, just as far as a progress checkup. There is some language in our current zoning bylaws, and I'll look at Kevin here, regarding rooming houses and boarding houses and unrelated people living within the same home. And there is some case law also regarding our abilities to enforce that and go into those homes and start counting the number of rooms. So Kevin, maybe build off that a little bit on the building inspection side of it as well, and whether there would be a difference based on the number of people in that home.
So through your worship, single-family homes are, through the building code, are definitely different than commercial, multifamily situations. Although I think there is some leniency for just sleeping rooms. It really comes in when you have multiple cooking facilities and things like that. But this has been an ongoing issue. The last time we had a fairly robust economy, and we're starting to see that as things pick up again, and likely that will become an issue. As Duncan alluded to, some of the challenges will be as we update the bylaw and the zoning, which will really regulate what the specifics of how many unrelated people, rooming houses, boarding houses, what that looks like, is more so the enforcement aspect of it and how we can go onto private property and whether we need injunctions. And it gets a little more delicate, actually, the enforcement piece. We can certainly look to put some language in bylaws, but it'll be following up on the bylaw that will be on that as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor.
There's two patterns here. One is a private dwelling that is lived in by the owner, and then they let out rooms. And then I believe this is true in this instance. The owner does not live there. And there's concerns about supervision, safety. Surely, if there's a safety issue, can't we invite ourselves through the owner to make sure that it is up to code? I mean, that seems to be, again, we're not seeking an injunction and forcing ourselves in there. Why can't we offer that? I mean, surely the individual, for their own insurance purposes, would want to know that they're operating, the building's up to code for what they're doing.
So yeah, through your worship, we can get a little more detail if we get the specific location, and we can take a look. It's enforceable through our existing realm. So maybe through the building code, if there's been a renovation and there's some living quarters in a basement that maybe wasn't designed for that. That might be an area we can get into. But we can only go as far as our existing bylaws and our existing zoning.
Yeah, so just the issue which we've talked about before, and I understand that the difficulties is, people are entitled to quiet enjoyment of their neighborhood, and when you have 5 or 6 vehicles, right, in a building there's no supervision, there's real concerns about safety in a more general sense than just fire. So I empathize with this, and I think we've got to see what we can do about it to the maximum extent, within the law, of course.
Yeah. And sorry, one last comment through your worship. I think as recent as last week, and I had mentioned this to a couple of council already, the province has tabled legislation regarding rental zoning. And that means it's a little different for each community. In some of the larger centers, they're looking at trying to create rental stock. Some of the resort municipalities, they're trying to create rental zones for short-term 5-6 day rentals. And in our area, I'm not sure how that applies yet, but as that legislation rolls out, that's something else we'll need to include.
Councillor Wilbur?
I just want to add to that too, and I see Mr. Eads is here in the crowd, so I want to talk about his neighborhood, because the last time we vamped up, a house across the street from him had 15 trucks in it. And so we're seeing that again, and we're seeing these ads rampant on Facebook. So like Councillor Parslow, I've had some sent to me as well, and I think it's at this point going to come down to the neighbors calling in and letting staff know that that is happening, because at this point we're complaint based, so we don't, unless we're gonna have someone full-time watching Facebook or it seems to be mostly social media that it's advertised, but I've seen rooms that are a room being advertised for $1,000 a month, no bathroom, no nothing, just a room. So now you get 3 or 4 guys in this room, and I can see it like last time when we were busy, where they're running night shift and day shift, which is what happened in Mr. Ezard's neighborhood. Literally 15 trucks, extension cords running everywhere, to the point where they couldn't get out of their driveway sometimes. So I think there's going to have to be some onus on our public as well to phone in and say, this is happening in my neighborhood, because I don't know until all this is done how staff would even deal with this. The community's going to have to phone in and let us know, but it is becoming very rampant.
So our entire community, with very few exceptions, is zoned RS2. And having gone through this, RS2 gives anybody the opportunity to build a home with a suite in it. You could have 5 bedrooms in that home, as a result of which you have 5, 6, 7 vehicles parked at those residences. And I absolutely know that to be the case, because they see it. And so that's the density of building a community when you're adding that kind of opportunity and how you develop community. So we have up on 18th Street, we have duplexes with suites in them, so paved curb to curb, property line to property line. And so RS2 gives people the opportunity to build a home with a suite in it, and it's a rental investment property. And I absolutely get the aspect of residential rooming houses and boarding houses are a different category, and my understanding under our bylaw, but that's a fact of how the density adds to the opportunities of increasing rental accommodation for people in their homes, and as a result of it, you have 4 or 5 bedrooms that are rented out. Councillor Schumann.
Yeah, so obviously those units and that zoning was not implemented in order to have this happen. It was an unexpected result of the zoning to create density, to increase the rentals available to our community members and people working in our communities. The item on the diary is something that we were going to look at. We were going to talk about permitting for these kind of places. There's all sorts of things we can do. It has to have an owner. The owner has to live in it. There has to be rules. Right now, it's just a free-for-all out there, and we don't really have any teeth in our zoning or our bylaws in order to stop this from happening. And I think that what Councillor Parslow is asking for is for us to move on this and to start implementing some different rules that will put a stop to this, because it is definitely a problem and an unintended consequence of what we were doing in order to increase the housing options in Dawson.
No, and I, not for a second was I insinuating that was the intent. That's exactly what has happened as a result of development and the evolution of that development. And certainly it's in our diary, it's through our OCP process, and we're going to look at that bylaw and understand how we can move it forward, as we did in the past with the Residential Development Committee, where we started to implement requirements for the number of bedrooms you had in your suite, that you had to have for each bedroom an off-street parking space. And so that was part of that process. And now the next phase is, under this OCP, is identify the bylaw issues around that. Councillor Wilbur?
I just want to add to that, that in a lot of these cases, these rentals and these homes aren't homes with secondary suites. They are homes with 4 or 5 bedrooms that they are running crews out of, day and night shift. They get a change of sheets, and they're using the same beds, and they're putting 15 and upwards people into homes. We have the home that has the MTC company in it. There was 8 trucks there this morning. There are 13 people living in that home. I don't think that's a 13-bedroom home. So it's not just about secondary suites. It is about people taking homes and, like last time, hanging curtains, crisscrossing their basements, and putting cots in for these guys to rent and sleep in. It's cheap for them. So, I mean, it's not just the secondary suites.
Thank you. Councillor Parzal.
Well, I'm glad I got this message on Messenger because it is a hot issue. There's a distinction, I think, between those homes designed to have suites, and I'd like to make a distinction perhaps between owner-occupied versus a rental investment income. Amazing that they can't have they're not required to have a business license. Now, I attended 3 AGMs. The Historical Society, the Mile Zero Park Society, and the Art Society. Barbara Swale is the president for the Art Society. Dale Campbell is the president for the Mile Zero Park Society, and Stu Flynn continues as president of the Historical Society. I'm pleased to report that all 3 organizations are financially sound, operating with good care and attention to cash flow, etc., etc. In the case of the art gallery, it's clear that there's a need for a teaching workshop area somewhere in the community. They are working towards that. With the loss of the visual arts program at the college, that has had an impact, but the new leadership there, the executive director, the classes, a lot of classes are happening, but the access to that bin top room is difficult for many and does not meet the need. So that's something they're working at. The Mile Zero Park Society, I think we all know that they have a plan. They work at their long-term plan year by year. Council's most aware of the Rotary Lake issue and what can happen or may not happen there, and there's a need sometime when the mayor says it's ready, he's ready for that, for us to have a public meeting about what is going on there and the options. The Sudeten Hall is an issue. Seems to be we have continued issues with facilities and down there, but other than that, everything's working well. With the Historical Society, we have a problem of a different nature. I guess I would summarize it as a group that has primarily been operated with volunteers. Now it was a paid staff person, and the interface between volunteers and paid staff person is having some teething problems, and so anyway, that's that. So I have a motion on this agenda, and the motion is that Council direct staff to implement the recommendation of Tetra Tech in its report of June the 16th, 2017 concerning the runway extension by, and I quote from the document, from the report, quantifying the economic impact of YDQ to the city through an economic impact assessment. So that's my motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Rogers, discussion.
Can I speak to the
Go ahead.
motion? The Auditor General for Local Government has made many recommendations to municipalities that things to do before they engage in capital projects. We as a council adopted those guidelines, and one of the guidelines involves really doing a thorough business analysis. And I'm concerned that council may be embarking on a project that would come back to haunt council as a project that we've undertaken on a number of assumptions. We don't know in a quantified way the impact and importance of the airport. If we're going to invest $20 million as per our 5-year plan, I think we should really have a crystal clear picture in dollars and cents of what the importance is of the airport is to the community. Past councils, not this council, past councils have made a number of decisions based upon assumptions. I think I'm just going to mention one, the Dawson Creek Rage. I could mention several others, okay, that have cost the taxpayers millions of dollars, that a bit more research would show that it was not capable, Dawson Creek Rage was not capable of functioning without subsidy. There's not a hockey team that I know of that doesn't have subsidies. I won't go on to the other decisions, but I'm just appealing to council, let's get some factual, informed information about the importance of this airport to the community to anchor future decisions. So that's why I believe we should do it.
Thank you. Second, any other comments, questions, discussion?
I think pretty much covered it. I just have a couple of comments. There was other facilities that he didn't mention, but I do remember when I first got elected that it's out in here. It was taking a lot of heat from the amount of money that it cost for the Calvin Brook Center for Performing Arts and how much that went over budget, and then the local government report that came out and all the recommendations that went from that. So I'd just like to ask staff, are we following that report and those guidelines? Because I thought that there was a motion made at one point that we would follow those guidelines. And are we following those guidelines now? So if I could ask that to staff.
Duncan?
So through your worship, I was given a heads up that this AGLG report might be mentioned. So I brought forward the recommendations out of the report. There were 7 recommendations. The first recommendation was requiring the preparation of a business case prior to council approval. The second was identifying some key risks associated with major capital projects on that financial side and mitigating prior to approval. And then it went into some other areas around budgeting, procurement policies, and enhancing our capital asset management practices, as well as conflict of interest policies, etc. So what I can speak to is the reports that have been done to date on the airport, and albeit some of them are older now. In 2011, a sustainability report was completed by McElhaney on the airport. 2012, a passenger leakage study was completed for the airport by Tagus Management. 2012, the city looked at an airport governance report through Jerry Berry. 2017, a business case was created for a 6,500 foot runway extension through Tetra Tech. In 2017, a business case was updated for a 6,000 foot runway identifying planes. The only other comment I can make is through various reports, and I've provided some of those, it's been indicated that airlines, in particular passenger airlines, won't commit to landing at a particular airport if there's an extension. This has happened in other municipalities. They've invested in airport runway extensions and the airlines haven't relocated, and there's been some lawsuits in those cases. So I don't know that you will get a specific airline to commit. There may be other areas as far as long-term capital planning that Councillor Parslow's mentioned that could be considered in an economic impact study. However, at this point, the direction to staff is to proceed with the runway extension. And there's a report later on in this agenda identifying the next steps and seeking approval from council to move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, for me, it just kind of scares me because there's a 5-year plan that part of the 5-year plan is spend over $20 million on the airport. That was passed, I think, last year. So my concern is that once you commit to something, the way I look at it, so you're essentially going to commit to $20 million over the next 5 years. I know money comes and money goes and it might not happen and stuff like that, but why start putting money into something if you're not going to finish the job? And the sustainability report that was mentioned by staff, there was recommendations in all of those reports, and none of those recommendations were followed through by council. So it's very concerning to me, and if you're going to be investing that amount of money into something, you better have a damn good reason why you're actually doing it.
So I'm going to just make a couple of comments. 20 million is the overall project, and I don't think this project or the overall long-term plan for the airport and projected. And this particular project is 5 million, and I think all of us through our discussion said we're not going to spend 5 million unless we can get 2/3 of that grant money. None of us have indicated that we would be in favor of spending that kind of money on the airport runway. And so by grabbing 2/3 of that funding through grants that we can get now because we have passenger service, puts our number at $1 million or $1.5 million depending on the grant. So clearly I'm not in favor of spending $5 million on our airport runway extension unless we get that grant money. And so the other piece to it is, for me, is we have to get that engineering done in order to, and that piece done that's for later in our agenda, before we can even start to move forward to determine whether we can get that grant money or not to do the airport runway extension. And so from my perspective, I'm in favor of the airport extension as long as we get that grant money. And if we don't get the grant money, I'm not in favor of it. But I think the airport is so important, in my view. Air ambulances. We have 250 to 280 flights a year. Talk to somebody that's got flown out of our community that couldn't get ground transportation to either Grand Prairie or Fort St. John for a serious medical issue. That airport's important to us, and I think we got to plan for the future of it, but not on all of our residents, taxpayers' backs. Councillor Wilbur.
You just said exactly what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Councillor Wilbur. Schumann.
Through you to staff. So we do have some business case work that has been done.
So through your worship, we have these 5 reports, and the last report through Tetra Tech was titled a business case and included some of those aspects, but may not have addressed everything that council was looking for. And yeah, so it is a business case. I could say you've probably done more reporting on this project than maybe some other projects valued at 1.5. I don't know about 5 million. That would have to go back a little ways. But so yes, you have done a business case.
Councillor Parslow, then Councillor McFadden.
Just 2 comments. The question around the Auditor General for local government, you didn't answer that part of the question from Councillor Rogers. There's several recommendations which were adopted by this council prior to your time as CAO. That's just an aside. I'm not.
Yeah.
This motion is word for word is a recommendation made by Tetra Tech for the supplementary report on the 6,000 runway. They're recommending to council from their knowledge that we should do this. And I agree, if we're going to do this, fine. There are other aspects to the airport, which has been mentioned, the importance of the medical evacuation capacity that is provided not just to the city, but to the region, right? And that is another issue which the mayor is working at, right? I can say that because Dale told me. And that's another issue. But this is the economic impact. And I get all sorts of questions about the airport, and I'd like to have something in my hip pocket and the collective council's knowledge and the public's knowledge that quantifies the economic impact. That is part of the business case for the airport, which is completely absent in all the work done by Tetra Tech. It's another study that they're recommending, and I agree with them.
Thank you. Councillor McFadden.
I think we've studied this almost ad nauseum. I won't be supporting the motion. We've got, as staff has said, a report every year for the last 4 or 5 years. And there's another report coming up later at the meeting that outlines even better details. And I think the mayor said it all, so I won't be supporting the motion.
To Administration, Duncan, do we have any indication how much and how long it would take to do an economic impact assessment?
So through your worship, is Patrick in the room? Oh, there he is. I know we have recently received some quotes, and I believe it's in his report for public consultation and kind of a high-level design. I would assume that consultation might be a similar price. What was the cost of that?
It was around 20,000.
Yeah, approximately. I think a high estimate would be about $20,000. Do you remember what we paid Tetra Tech to do their business case? Yeah, that was a couple of years ago. So I think you would be somewhere around that 10, 15, somewhere in there.
And how long?
We would go out to RFP, which would take two or 3 weeks, and then we could close it out. I'm sure we could have it done by the fall, I think. It would take some time, but yeah, I think we could have it done by the fall.
And later in the agenda, the second, that's the hard part now, is we have a second report coming asking for approval to move forward with the engineering analysis, right? Which council has given direction to.
Sorry, yes, through your worship, yeah. So council has directed that this project be undertaken. I was asked around timeline as far as when we could have the engineered drawings done. It's really a decision of council. There are different types of grants out there. This is a little premature, but I'll note it now. There are different types of grants. We received a grant at the curling rink which funded the design in 1 year and the construction in a 2nd year. There are other grants that just fund that construction component. If you complete the design this year and a grant comes available, you'll be able to start that project sooner.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion, Councillor Rogers?
Just one comment.
We gotta move. We got 9.
Yeah, it was where Councillor Parslow was reading. It was the 3rd bullet, and then it said, okay, I'll just go to the end of it. YDQ to the city through an economic impact assessment and submitting applications to a funding agencies. So that was the 4th bullet, was doing that. So we're told in the report, yes, like your worship said, we're going to be sending out all of this, we're going to be applying for funding through various agencies. But part of the report is that we do an economic assessment of it. So you're going to probably find when you go to apply for all of these grants, they're going to say, you know what, you're missing a piece. You're missing the economic assessment. And that's similar to what happened when we got funding for the, I believe it was the sweeper and the grader. That had to go back because we had to do a little bit more work on that before we got that grant. So I'm just saying, it's probably going to come back and you have to do it anyway.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's defeated. We're going to move to delegations. We're at 9:04, and our first delegation this morning, 6.1. We have Elaine Washington from the South Peace Hospice Palliative Care Society are in attendance for the Hospice Palliative Care Month proclamation.
Yay.
clap after I've read it.
We're gonna
In
clap them
case I
too.
mess
We're
it
gonna
up.
cheer.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for coming this morning.
This is wonderful.
Whereas Hospice Palliative Care Month is focused on raising awareness and recognizing that everyone should have access to quality end-of-life care. And whereas the Dawson Creek Hospice and Palliative Care Society is comprised of a large number of volunteers that provide direct and indirect hospice palliative care services to those individuals living within Dawson Creek. And whereas member organizations collectively reflect the entire hospice palliative care continuum, from patients who are dying but living within their communities to those who are dying in hospitals. And whereas the Dawson Creek Palliative Care Society seek to ensure that hospice palliative care for patients and their families is integrated and of high quality, and believes that this can be achieved through commitment, awareness, and partnerships. Now therefore I do hereby proclaim May 2018 as Hospice Palliative Care Month in Dawson Creek.
Thank you.
Yay!
So you can't express enough how much we appreciate the work of the Hospice Care Society in terms of the work they do on behalf of community in the region and our residents. And it's such important work that for all of us who appreciate how difficult that can be and how valuable. So thank you for doing that on behalf of our community and region.
Thank you. I do want to say that in the past 10 months, we have a bed loan program, and those beds have been used in our community 473 days. So in 10 months, that's a lot of time those people are not spending in the hospital. The other thing, for the month of May, we will have a display of books on loss and grieving at the Dawson Creek Library, and that was utilized quite well last year, so we're doing the same this year. And one more thing, we were the recipients of the 100 Women Who Care, and so we have several programs that we want to move forward with. So thank you for this, and Marla and I appreciate it, and we'll carry on.
Thank you. And how amazing the 100 women, and to be able to have that
That's
ability to feed into our community for the important
Yes.
work that goes on. And we're really excited to see you guys were the lucky winners, the
very
successful
excited.
applicants. So it's you can't do the work without having some financial support.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much for
Thank
coming
you
in
so
this
much.
morning.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Sherry Mitover, board member from the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada for MS Awareness Week Month proclamation. And they have a request as well.
Yay!
Good morning. Welcome. Good. Welcome.
Get in.
All right.
Get back in.
Whereas the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada is the only national organization in Canada that supports both MS research and services for people with MS and their families. And whereas multiple sclerosis symptoms vary widely and may lead to problems with numbness, coordination, vision and speech, as well as extreme fatigue and even paralysis. And whereas annual fundraising events such as the MS Walk, the MS Bike, and A&W Burgers to Beat MS programs to enhance the lives of people affected by multiple sclerosis and their families, and supports MS research in Canada. And whereas BC will continue to lead the way in multiple sclerosis research through one of the world's most renowned multiple sclerosis research facilities at the University of British Columbia. And whereas together we will find ways to enhance the quality of lives for people affected by multiple sclerosis and find a cure to end MS. And now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim May 2018 as MS Awareness Month for the City of Dawson Creek. Thank you so much for coming in and giving the attention to this that it deserves and needs, and wouldn't it be amazing at the end to find a cure?
Yes, I got diagnosed 5 years ago, so this is very near and dear to me. I have worked really hard in the Fort St. John and local area to bring awareness and raise money, so I invite everybody to come to the Fort St. John MS Walk on Sunday, May 27th in Fort Fort St. John at 11 o'clock. And I would also like to request our MS flag be raised at City Hall
All right.
for the month of May.
Sure. So we'll bring that request forward under Mayor's business, and Council will give it its consideration at that time. Thanks so much for coming in. Good luck with your MS walk, and all the best, and we hope that we find a cure.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Fire Chief Smith, Gordon Smith, and Bob Fulton, Deputy Chief, and Sabrina Walter, our famous Emergency Support Services leader.
Super.
Emergency Preparedness Week proclamation. Good morning, good morning, good morning, welcome. Morning, morning, welcome. Good morning. Come on in.
She goes straight for the hub.
No, no, up front. Come on, no, no, up front. Yeah. Nice try. Go hide behind. Go hide behind the desk. I don't think so. Whereas Emergency Preparedness Week is a national awareness initiative that has taken place annually since 1996. And whereas Emergency Preparedness Week encourages Canadians to take 3 simple steps to become better prepared to face a range of emergencies. Know the risk, make a plan, get an emergency kit. And whereas this year the theme is Be Emergency Ready. It is meant to help Canadians take action to protect themselves and their families during emergencies. This year's theme emphasizes the need to keep up to date on current conditions like the weather that might impact you. And whereas by taking an active role in your community, you're helping to build a culture of preparedness in Canada. With your help, we can communicate the importance of emergency preparedness throughout Dawson Creek. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim May 6th to 12th, 2018 to be observed as Emergency Preparedness Week in Dawson Creek.
So, thank you.
There you go. Thank you, guys. We obviously, this last week was a little bit of a signal for us about preparedness and our potential of our creek rising and the floodwaters potentially imminent upon us. And so you appreciate those little, what I call events in our community that make how important it is for us to be prepared. And so we appreciate you guys and the work you do, and thank you for coming in and giving it some attention.
This week's events showed you that we are, as a city, we're prepared, thanks to Kevin and his crew acting so quickly on that water issue. But not only do you have to be prepared as a city, you have to be prepared as an individual too. And here in front of me I have a kit, and this is my kit that I have. I could survive for 72 hours with just this kit. Without power, without water, there's got food, there's got water, there's got a flashlight, radio, all this in the kit. So this is the kind of stuff as an individual citizen that you should be prepared for a kit like that. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in. Brina? Nothing? It's all good? Thanks for coming in, you guys. Brina. 6.4, are they here? There they are. So delegation 6.4, we have Jeff Taylor, Kevin Swales, Jason Guys are here from the Dawson Creek Senior Canucks. And bringing in, nothing like bringing in something shiny. So this is the Senior Canucks and their Koi Cup run to Williams Lake, which is the Senior Men's AA Provincial Championship. And the boys went down with a long history and tradition of senior hockey in our community. And I think this is is this the first time the Canucks have been on the cup?
Yeah.
So congratulations, you guys. Thanks for bringing it in. The floor is yours. Say your piece and welcome.
I guess we just want to say thanks to everybody for the support. We didn't really understand that, the history going back to 1912 and Johnny Bauer ran this thing in the 20s or 30s. So it's pretty cool. We can keep it until the new year, and hopefully we'll win it again next year. But we really appreciate the support of the city and pulling enjoy it for the summer and get back at it in the fall.
Thank you. So this, honestly, I say this, the tradition of our senior hockey, the senior Canucks in our community was what we grew up with, all of us who were born and raised in our community, and it provided us that opportunity to go and watch the seniors play hockey, and it was the NHL for us as growing up in this community. And so for you guys to do this, and I think about my buddy Stu Minifee, who just passed away recently, and Stu was an avid senior Canucks leader and manager, and really gave us a whole bunch of effort to it. And I think about this as a real great commitment and tribute to Stu. So thank you guys.
We're going to meet the cup at City Hall for the day.
Perfect.
Tomorrow. So.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
We'll have wine at lunchtime. Yeah, I almost did there. Stewie. Stewie. Carla Boyd, our watershed technician, is here this morning for Water Week and Drinking Water Week proclamation.
I love this.
Good morning, you guys. Welcome. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Come on up. Bring the posters. So it's my pleasure this morning to read our proclamation on Water Week. Whereas human health is dependent upon an abundant supply of pure, clean drinking water. And whereas safety, quality, and abundance of water can only be safeguarded by sound environmental protection, appropriate treatment, and properly maintained distribution systems. And whereas we are all stewards of the water infrastructure and watersheds, which future generations depend upon. And whereas each citizen of our community is called upon to help protect our source waters from pollution, to practice water conservation, and to get involved in local water issues. And whereas the federal, provincial, and local governments, as well as concerned organizations, are cognizant and supportive of measures which promote safe, clean, and abundant water and responsible wastewater management. And whereas one such measure involves heightening public awareness of the value of our drinking water resources and encouraging the public to promote this awareness. Now therefore I do hereby proclaim and invite all citizens in our community to actively participate in the week of May 6th to 12th, 2018 as Drinking Water Week and BC Water Week in Dawson Creek. So having spent the last while learning about how important for the city of Dawson Creek, our water source, the distribution, protecting the watershed, understanding the Kiskatna watershed, and all of the components around it, you start to appreciate how important that work is. And so really I want to express our thanks to you guys for the work you do in helping inform and educate the community about how important that topic is for all of us.
And the watershed technicians and water treatment plant operators will be visiting grade 5 classrooms in School District 59, as well as some of the private schools around the area for BC Water Week and Drinking Water Week. And there will also be a poster contest for the grade 5 students to participate in with the topic of what does water mean to you? So we look forward to seeing all those entries and thank everyone for being stewards of their own watershed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job, you guys. Thank you. Thanks, you guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Cutest models ever.
Thank you.
And our next delegation.
You're not done with us yet.
6.6, we have Kayla and Michelle for going to give us an update on our city watershed stewardship program.
So good morning and thank you all for having us here today. For those of you who may not know us, my name is Kayla Boyd.
And I'm Michelle Greenwood.
We're both watershed technicians for the city. And today we're going to go over some of the highlights of the 2017 Watershed Stewardship Program and go over some of the things we have planned for this year.
So to start us off, I'm going to ask and answer the question, why is the Kiskatna River watershed important? Well, as I'm sure you all know, it is the only source of drinking water in the area, and it supports approximately 20,000 residents. It also offers habitat for a wide variety of plants and animals, and it provides our community with a number of recreational opportunities such as camping, hiking, and fishing. So overall, it supports our community and surrounding areas.
Our next question is, what are some of the challenges we face? So the first one here, we have climate change. So with climate change, we may see an increase in peak flows, an increase in fire hazards, an increase in disease and insects in the area, and just an overall increase in extreme events. With that, we may also see a decrease in summer flows. Another challenge we face is increased traffic within the watershed, so it's more important than ever that we maintain our relationships with our stakeholders within the watershed so we can maintain the best practices, best management practices possible. We also face challenges with both water quantity and water quality, which we'll get into a little more detail later on.
So how do we ensure water sustainability? In order to monitor the water quality throughout the watershed, we have a sampling program that runs biannually, so once in the spring and once in the fall. We currently have approximately 17 sites that we sample from in order to delineate sources of contamination in the watershed. Some sources of contamination can decrease the effectiveness of water treatment processes, so mitigating those issues upstream will help decrease the cost for water treatment.
Stakeholder relationships and outreach, information sharing. So sharing information with other stakeholders within the watershed is crucial for our best management practices. Just as an example, the Watershed Stewardship Program is a member of the Kiskatna River Water Users Group, in which the purpose is to communicate planned and actual water diversions from the Kiskatna River to enable the coordination of diversions to best meet the needs of group members while also decreasing the impact on the river, so particularly in times of low flow. Partnerships, working with others to share our knowledge. Another example is the Watershed Stewardship Program in the past has partnered with the Dawson Creek Watershed Society to host training events for members of the public and also host summer youth programs. A special thanks here to the Rural Budgets Administration Committee of the Peace River Regional District, who have committed to funding $200,000 to the Watershed Stewardship Program over a period of 5 years, which will end in 2020. So each year their funding helps enable and enhance the Watershed Stewardship Program. Moving on to outreach. The Watershed Stewardship Program, like I mentioned before, hosts educational events, presents at local schools, clubs, and committees, and facilitates contests throughout the year. Public education, awareness, and knowledge is vital when it comes to the community members wanting to do their part and be stewards of their own watersheds.
So what have we done to enhance our city's water security? Another partnership that we've been involved in is one with the University of Northern British Columbia, the Ministry of Environment, and Flynn Road. We all came together to fund and complete a research master's project. So the goal of the project was to be able to predict the flows in the Kiskatna River, and this will ultimately help us predict when we see spring runoff or freshet. And this project was completed earlier this year, just in time for us to do this year's prediction.
So predicting spring runoff for the city is so important because during times of high flow, it becomes very dirty, the water becomes very dirty, which can be very damaging to our pumps and our water treatment system. So the pumps may remain off for a period of up to 6 to 8 weeks during this time. So being able to predict when we may see this spring freshet helps the city prepare by filling the reservoirs and be prepared for possible flood conditions within the watershed. So using the tool created by the UMBC graduate student, we were able to predict that peak spring runoff this year would be April 29th, which was just yesterday. So far, this prediction appears to be accurate, with the past 3 days recording a peak flow of 178 meters cubed per second at Eris. As you can see in this table here, from 2013 to 2018, the peak runoff dates can vary significantly.
So the city has lots of raw water storage in the form of reservoirs. We currently have 4 online right now, giving us a total of 128 days of storage based on average consumption rates. We also have 2 weirs installed, one at Bear Hole Lake and one at Eris, where our intake is. Together, this infrastructure gives us a total storage of 385 days, so just over a year. And keeping in mind that this is based on just average consumption rates and can last a lot longer if conservation measures are implemented.
Additional storage. So just last year, the construction of the new South Dawson Reservoir began, which has the storage capacity of 1 million cubic meters, which is a total of 155 days. So this final construction will be completed this summer, and filling of the reservoir will commence this fall, which brings our total storage capacity to 540 days, or approximately 1.5 years.
Bear Hole Lake Water Balance Study. So Bear Hole Lake is the headwaters of the East Kiskatna River. It stores 1.36 million cubic meters of water, with the opportunity for the city to do a release for downstream use via our discharge pipe that's installed in the weir. We also monitor flows into and out of the lake and the climate in the area in order to better understand the lake's flow regime. And if you see the image on the bottom left is actually Kayla doing a release at the weir just to check the functionality of the pipe.
Bear Hole Lake bathymetric survey. We contracted Peace Country Technical Services this past summer to complete a bathymetric survey of Bear Hole Lake, which is a depth profile of the lake. In this case, we used an instrument called an M9, which uses acoustic Doppler or sound waves to record the depth as it's being towed around the lake every second. So in the bottom right, you can see the map. So this was important for the city to complete because it was the first bathymetric survey since 1977. Since then, in 2009, we installed the weir at Bear Hole Lake. So when we compared the two maps from 1977 and 2017, they were very similar. So we noted that there were not any significant changes in sedimentation along the bottom of the lake since then. So that's great news.
Is that like a real high-tech fish finder? Like, is that available?
Basically. I don't know if you could use it for that, maybe.
Not sure, I might not want to try that.
So we also completed a shoreline vegetation assessment as part of our park use permit monitoring requirements. When the weir was installed, the lake level was raised slightly, so this just ensures that we can monitor any changes that we might see on the shoreline. In 2017, our assessment resulted in finding that there was no shoreline changes that were significant, and the vegetation appears to be stabilizing.
So fish habitat assessment. Currently, it's believed that the fish ladder at the Bear Hole Lake weir may not be adequately functioning for the passage of our target species, which are yellow perch, which you can see in the top right corner, and northern pike in the bottom right corner. So we completed the fish habitat assessment to determine if the habitat in the smaller lake just downstream of Bear Hole Lake weir was suitable for these target species to carry out their life processes before we went ahead with fish ladder modifications. So the 2017 results showed that this smaller lake does offer spawning and rearing habitat for these target species, and also 3 locations were identified as possible overwintering habitat for these target species as well. So the city is currently working with BC Parks and Forestry Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development, they're a mouthful now, to make a decision on fish ladder modifications. So Michelle's going to discuss this after our next question.
So what are we doing to advance the program? A project that we have planned to complete this summer is a fish habitat or fish assessment on Bear Hole Lake. The last fish assessment was completed in 2002 by the government of British Columbia. And the goal of this project is to ensure a healthy fish population and proper functionality of the fish ladder. You can see the fish ladder is the photo on the left, and it is just looking downstream.
We would also like to create a watershed stakeholder advisory group. So we would like to invite stakeholders within the watershed to be a part of this advisory group. Together, we would like to identify the current risks within the watershed, which may be related to some of the issues I mentioned earlier with climate change, increased traffic, water quality, water quantity issues. With that, we would like to assess the risk categories, rank these risks based on their hazard potential, and once we gather all this information, we would like to update the source water protection plan that was last updated in 2007.
And overall, we are continuously looking to improve our watershed stewardship program by increasing our preparedness for extreme events, enhancing our monitoring data collection and storage, establishing a holistic management approach through building new partnerships and relationships, and of course, always expanding our knowledge and professional development.
Thank you. Are
Thanks.
there any questions?
Councillor Parslow.
Could you expand on the issue that was conveyed to council members by email about access to Bear Hole Lake and caribou population studies?
Yes, so there's currently studies that they would like to protect the caribou populations, which Bear Hole Lake is within the Quintet and the Narroway caribou habitat. So currently the government is working on protecting these caribou habitats. So potentially there is a possibility that there may be restricted access to Bear Hole Lake and the provincial park, but we're not sure what that looks like yet. So we're looking forward to continuing the relationship and the program with them.
So there's no need for council to get involved with stressing the importance of us being able to monitor conditions like we have been?
That's true. We would like to stress that it is so important because with limited access, it will be difficult for us to manage the weir. And with our park use permit, we have requirements that if we didn't have access, we wouldn't be able to meet those requirements. So it would be, very important that we do have access to Bear Hole Lake to manage our weir.
And on that point, I'll just, Councillor Parslow, that we have brought it forward to NCLGA. We've got a special resolution that we're going to modify to NCLGA to get to the minister, and a group of the South Peace mayors have a meeting with Minister Donaldson in a week or 2 weeks, exactly on that topic, because it impacts so much of the region, and not only northeast but also the northern which comes. So there's absolutely work going on as a result of that right now.
So just to jump in as well, through your worship, the work that the Watershed Stewardship Program has done also enables us to show the impact of our weir and the impact of our use of Bear Hole Lake, as the ladies mentioned, that vegetation study and some of the habitat and the fish. And so we have a lot of data and a lot of information for this conversation in order to, I guess, address our impact and the work that we're doing. So I feel pretty comfortable that we're well situated for the discussion.
Yep.
So second question, climate change. What are the predictions concerning climate change and its impact on Bear Hole Lake?
I don't know specifically with Bear Hole Lake. I think the issue with climate change is we really don't know what that looks like yet. Just an increase in extreme events, potentially low flows in the summer. So it's really important that we do maintain Bear Hole Lake and we have that as backup, and able to supplement flows during times of low flow is very important. So I think climate change is a difficult one because we really don't know what that looks like. So having these tools and working with UMBC to being able to predict when spring runoff is really helpful in preparing us to be prepared for the unpredicted, I guess.
Final question, how long do you expect it to take to fill up the new additional storage?
That is maybe a question for Devin if he's here.
So through your worship, you have 1 million cubes in that reservoir. If you look at the ability for us to pump during low flows, we can pump upwards of 9,000 cubes out of the river. Town usually takes 6,000 depending on usage. So you've got a couple, 2,000 to 3,000 of spare depending on what our capacity is. So roughly it's going to take 500 days.
500 days to fill it.
Plus or minus.
Yeah, and through your worship, we talked about speeding this process up. However, with that quantity of water, we want to be sure before we fill that reservoir up that everything's working properly. So we had talked about maybe pumps and some alternate measures in order to fill it quicker, but at this point, I think we're comfortable with the couple thousand cubes we're going to divert in there. In case there is some changes or challenges, we don't want to have to remove 1 million cubes.
Yep, go ahead.
So still with the same topic, we notice around the Peace Country how the oil industry is moving water from reservoirs on the surface, with these pumps and stuff. Given that we talk about seasonal or heavy intensity rainfall events and then periods of comparative drought, wouldn't it be wise to try to partnership with an oil industry and pump out of that river when it's flowing high? And rather than using our own pumps, why not get some temporary pumps? Just a thought that's sort of just coming to my head.
Yep.
So through your worship, just on that, as you noted earlier in the presentation, right now we have very high flows, but we
Yeah.
turn the pumps off.
Because of turbidity,
Yeah,
that's
we,
right.
we don't want to fill the new
Yeah.
reservoir full of turbid water, right? And it
Yeah.
is one of our last reservoirs before it goes to the plant. And part of the reservoir chain, starting at Hanson to Hart, to the new South Dawson, to the trails and on the plant, is actually part of the treatment process and settlement. So Hanson takes a good portion of that. So as we go through our own pumping process, it goes into Hanson and then out. That removes a lot of the turbidity out of the water, makes it a lot easier on the other reservoirs and the treatment process. So we wouldn't want to pump at high flows anyways. We'd want to pump at lower flows, which will be a little later in the spring and summer. So yeah, it's kind of a balance there. When we fill it, we want to make sure we fill it with fairly clean water.
So Hanson Reservoir, how long can that continue to operate if most of the silt has been deposited in that reservoir?
So we have 2 cells in there, an initial settling cell in that, and we dredged that last year. So
You dredge it?
Yeah.
I get you. Thank you. Good.
Councillor Wilbur? Did you? Oh, sorry. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's always so good to get the update on the watershed and how important it is, and it's the science, it's the data that gives us that understanding of how we manage it and how important it is for us. And so great job, and thanks for coming in. And I'm going to go on a road trip with you.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Yellow perch.
Yeah. Go fishing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our final delegation this morning, we have Aaron Oliver in from Leisure Services and Melanie regarding our Swap and Shop and Community Cleanup Campaign.
Melanie's birthday.
Oh, it's Mel's sick. Oh.
On her birthday, yes.
So I have Anna coming.
Good morning. Welcome. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. So just wanted to talk about community cleanup is on May 12th. We were going to do it May 5th, but just with the way our weather was, I wanted a chance for everything to dry up a bit more. Most of our sites have been filled. There is some sites that, so if people are interested, nonprofit organizations can give us a call. And then on the 14th and 15th, the seniors spring cleanup as well. So if individuals are interested in getting some of their yard waste picked up, the Rotarians are kind enough to go and do that. So, yes.
So it's always a good annual event. Give us a chance to clean up that winter stuff that collects. And so really appreciate all the community groups stepping up and helping clean up the city and get ready for summertime. So.
Yes, and May 12th as well is the shop and swap. So again, you know, doing some spring cleaning and taking rid of stuff and picking up some new stuff.
And where do they drop stuff off? Where does that held at?
So it's again at the Memorial Arena
Okay.
in the parking lot, and Kinsman will be there again for the barbecue for the volunteers
Awesome.
as well. So, yes.
Okay, thank you guys so much. See you on the 12th, and appreciate. So that ends our delegations. We'll take a 7-minute recess.
Oh.
And we're back into Councilor Richmond. Anything further, Councilor Park?
No.
He paused, good luck.
Councilor Shu.
Quick before Mark starts.
No, I'm waiting until after you guys are done. I got the best one.
So I spent a few days also at the Home and Garden Show, the Kiwanis Home and Garden Show. I want to congratulate them again on a fabulous event. A lot of people out, especially on Saturday. It was very, very busy. Talked to lots of people. Overwhelmingly happy to hear about our curbside recycling that we're going to see happen in September. You know, there was a few people not happy, but overwhelmingly happy about that. So that was nice to hear. I did attend the Minerals North Conference in Houston last week. My husband was going, so I caught a ride and chatted up with him, and so it was pretty affordable for me to go. And really I went on a little bit of a recognizance mission because I don't think we've attended this conference in the past, and wanted to see how well it was attended, how it ran, et cetera, et cetera. And so seeing how well little district of Houston was able to host this event, I think that next March, when it comes up again, I'm going to recommend that we do try to host this in 2021. So overall, it's a bit of a busy week.
Good, thank you. Other councillor business? Councillor Wilbur?
Mine's quick. One, I just want to say thank you to our local QP branch, our firefighters and our staff for recognizing the lost and the injured people in the workplace. And I think it was a well-hosted and attended event. And so thank you for doing that, because it's important to all of us, as was said there by many people, that we all return home safe from work. So great job in doing that, and I just want to put that out there. As well, I just want to give a kudos out to Crescent Park, who had a month-long campaign on empathy and anti-bullying, and to see the amount of students that really stepped forward and received awards for that was absolutely outstanding. But also they gave out their honor roll certificates. So all of our schools, it's that time of year where they're handing out and recognizing those students that are on the honor roll. So I just want to say congratulations to all of those students that did the extra work and got themselves on the honor roll. So we should be proud of them. They're our next leaders, and so I just want to say congratulations to anyone that got themselves on the honor roll and all those students working towards empathy.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers.
Excellent segue. Thanking CJDC and the co-op for this month's WOW Kid was Erin Minifee. That money that she gets from that will help her with her education. And yes, I already told her to come back after she's done university. More to follow up on that. The Youth Advisory Council, I met with a couple of champions last week over at the school. We're meeting again on Tuesday. So that's just moving forward. We're still in the discussions and stuff like that. They have the terms of reference that council had put forward to them, and I told them it's just a guide, and so they're working ahead on that. Any questions for that? Everybody's good? Okay. NDIT. Jerry Thiessen from Vanderhoof is now the chair. Evan Sogstad, after 10, 11 years, has stepped down, but he's still on the board. So congratulations to Jerry and Tom, who was the vice chair. We did have our annual general meeting. We're now managing $270 million, which is good. And there was something that at our board meeting that came out that I thought was really interesting. It was to do with an expression of interest by the city of Terrace for the Northwest Resident and Workforce Attraction. So that was an opportunity for me to talk about, because they're talking about retaining people and bringing people to the community. And I know that council has asking the regional district for an expression of interest regarding a field house. And I never give up. So with the, we talked a bit about the field house and retaining, and that got into the health of the community. So at in NCLGA, Holly Christian and Megan Klitsch, there are the leads for the healthy community development for Northeast BC. So they are going to be in Fort Nelson on May the 7th. I had talked to them because I'm trying to find out what the health of
what the heck
health of the Northeast or Northern British Columbia is like. And when I was talking to a lot of these people from the Cariboo or from the Northwest, they're all saying, yeah, we need something for our citizens to work out in because of winter and stuff like that. It's for all the different sports, etc. It was great conversations to have. And one other thing was the Regional Advisory Committee has formed an economic development task force. I met with Mayor Ackerman, Chair Brad Sperling, and Mayor Fraser, and a few others from the region here last week, and we were discussing the partners for economic development in our region and preparing some stuff for the regional district for that feasibility study as well. And that's what I've been up to.
Thank you. Anything further? Thank you, Council. 3.1, we have the minutes of our public hearing of Council for zoning amendment bylaw 4370 for adoption. Councillor Schumann, Councillor McFadden, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Minutes of public hearing of Council for your manufactured home park bylaw number 4368 for adoption. Councillor Wilbur, Councillor Schumann, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And our minutes of our regular meeting of Council of April 16th for adoption. Councillor Wilbur, Councillor Schumann, any errors or omissions in those minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any business arising out of any of the minutes? Councillor Rogers?
I believe I already talked about the field house. So
You raised that one?
I think so.
Thank you. Correspondence, we have letter 5.1. We have a letter from Northern Health re our spring dust season and air quality considerations. Councillor McFadden?
For information.
Received for information, seconded. Councillor Schumann, discussion. Councillor Parslow?
The air quality has been a long concern of mine in the piece with the oil and gas industry. I know that we do measure particulate matter in the air. Are we getting regular reports from Northern Health or whoever's put that equipment in?
Duncan?
So, through your worship, we have a measuring device on City Hall. Kevin, do you know the details of that? Or have we closed that program down?
I wasn't familiar with one at City Hall. I was familiar with the ones we had on the two schools. But
Two schools, yeah.
That program has ended. And we had asked for a final report on that, and to my knowledge, we have not received anything as of yet.
Okay.
Let's follow that up.
Yeah.
Well, that's just particulate matter. I mean, the other stuff in the air is another matter. But they've got some recommendations here in this letter, and I wonder if what's staff's reaction to them. Recommend or require hard surfacing of gravel roads or entrances to unpaved lots. Cover truckloads and or decontaminate trucks leaving work areas. Use vegetative buffers where possible. I'm smiling because we've got so many gravel roads in the area, and they're saying we should require hard surfacing. Is that being reflected at all in our in any of our bylaws? I don't think it has.
Yep, go ahead, Duncan.
So through your worship, through the capital budget this year, our focus is on existing roads. We don't have any plans to pave those gravel areas. We do have a dust prevention program utilizing calcium and reclaimed water on sidewalks. Kevin, anything else? Yeah, he's got the mic.
Getting in trouble for not using this.
Did Brenda give you the glare or something?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
With a smile yet.
There's a switch on that.
He's an engineer.
Not an audio engineer.
Maybe just grab the delegation table. Thanks, Kevin.
So, sorry, you were asking specifically
Just about our preventative dust prevention.
So, yeah, we have a dust control program that we will go out and apply calcium on all gravel streets and some laneways, very specific ones within the community. That's typically done after the road bans are off, because we usually do it in conjunction with some graveling and touching up of those streets. So that's going to typically occur in early June. Then depending on the weather that we have, how much rain or how much lack of moisture, that all kind of dictates on how well that program works. Typically our budget only allows for one application. And so depending on how things go, it can work well, or we can, within 3 weeks or a month, we could be back to fairly dusty situations.
So we have other public education and community outreach campaigns. Advise community members to not drive on shoulders and to reduce speeds when driving on gravel. Do we do that? Or Are we planning on doing that? Or are we just going to park this letter and receive it?
Well, so I've allowed a little flexibility here because the motion was to receive it for information. And so I'm kind of feeling a little allowing some discussion, but the motion was, in fairness.
Well, air quality is important, but I just find this letter more suited to maybe Vancouver than a rural area like we are.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. 5.2, we have a letter from Jim Inkster, Inland Motor Holdings, regarding consideration when issuing a business license. Councillor Schumann?
I think this is for information as well.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 5.3, we have a letter from Angela Ray, Dawson Creek Arts and Wellness Society, regarding the request for support for the arts and wellness activities in Dawson Creek. I wasn't aware of this society until recently.
I would move that we receive the information.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor McFadden. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have an email from Marilyn Chang, Senior Policy Analyst from the UBCM, regarding a member visit and childcare meeting. So they're going to be up here in the summer, I think. July. Duncan?
So through your worship, just for clarification, there's two pieces to this. There's the members visit, which I've committed to meeting with UBCM on July 19th that week. And the second piece is that childcare meeting, and their request is really whether council would like to meet with UBCM to discuss our childcare challenges in rural and remote northern BC.
I think it's a great idea, and anytime we get an opportunity to feed some impact into a provincial initiative like that, we should have an opportunity, and I'm certainly going to be available. So, Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, I think that that would be wise of us to do, and also perhaps include some of the childcare resources people
organization
that would have a better, I mean, it's been years since I've had to access childcare or even provide childcare myself, and so I'm not exactly sure what the...
Certainly community services and things will be able to put that...
I think if we organized a little bit of, not just ourselves, but have a few of the community people come in as well, it would be beneficial.
Sure. Seconded? Councillor, so I think you were making a motion.
I made a motion.
So you seconded?
Sure.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 5.5, we have a letter from Jeff Leckstrom, Transportation Manager, School District 59, regarding some traffic safety concerns. Duncan, can you talk about this just a little bit in terms of implications of a policy?
Yeah, so through your worship, this request is to have no parking signs essentially on both sides of 7th Street from 116th Avenue to the end of the school district property. There's already some no parking signs on this road. Essentially, you would render much of this road no parking. Essentially, you'd be taking from 116th Avenue almost to Canadian Tire on the west side of the road, or across from the school district, and on the school district side all the way to United Spring and Break.
Isn't the post office in there?
Yeah, Kevin. So, I mean, we have some signage in there. Have I missed any of that?
Yeah, so through your worship, there is some existing no parking signage along that to deal with some entrances to the backside of Canadian Tire and others. So if we do this, just council needs to be aware that there will be limited parking available. It's going to remove a large portion of that north part of 7th Street. There will still be some left in the southern portions, but it will alter it. So it's not impossible, but it will change it.
Thank you. It's your pleasure, Councillor Parslow.
I'd like to move that we install no parking signs on both sides of 7th Street, from 7th Street, 116th Avenue intersection to the end of School District 59 property on 7th Street.
On both sides?
Yes.
Okay. Seconded? Councillor Schumann? Discussion. Councillor Parslow?
This is a safety issue. The parking of these vehicles mates in this letter, Jeff is saying that it basically renders that road a one vehicle width, and buses There's been one accident, and buses are finding it difficult, and so it's a safety issue, and I can't see why these trucks can't be parked somewhere else. I would estimate that the distance is about a block, isn't it? That's been covered by this request.
Yeah, through your
Typical
worship.
city block.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Councillor Rogers?
I don't know. I was driving through there recently, and there's, you know, your comment was, they could park somewhere else. There pretty much isn't anywhere else for them to park. That street, that's commercial street, like that's a zone, commercial buildings and stuff like that down there?
I believe, other than the school district. And,
Commercial light industrial.
yeah.
Yeah, commercial and light industrial, well, that's what it is. Commercial and light industrial. They're parking on the road because it's zoned. No, I can't support it. I just look at it and I go, it's just, they're all professional drivers.
Further discussion? Ready for the question? Councillor Parsons?
Well, the letter states, when parked on 7th Street, the frac sand haulers create a one-lane roadway. And with our school buses exiting blindly to oncoming traffic and entering the school district 59 bus area, there's a major safety concern. A parallel for me is the practice of industrial trucks parking in front of Tim Hortons, McDonald's and so on. And not that I try to avoid it, but it's, you know, oncoming vehicles, traffic, it's dangerous, I think, for just a regular vehicle in that situation. So if we, I think as this is a safety issue, being put forward by a responsible agency, the school district, I think we should consider it very seriously.
Councillor Rogers?
Yeah. But your motion was both sides of the road.
There's already one side.
It's already one side.
Yeah, so they're asking for both sides.
I think one side.
I recently have dealt with some issues and concerns of the business owners along the access road in front of Tim Hortons, McDonald's, and the Brick because of the trucks parked along there. And so by restricting this, does that push them? And they've been trying to move away from that street because it is so narrow. So there's no easy answer to this one. If we restrict it, then we're going to start to get it from the other areas is all I'm concerned with. Anyway. Just for your information, I was dealing with the sand haulers and the companies recently over that access road and not this one. So.
Yeah, 'cause they are also, you know, over by the Encana Event Center along the sports field and stuff like that. Like
They're everywhere.
What
when
I'm
it's busy.
hearing is like, well, let's just chase them all uptown.
Thank you. Further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. At 5:06, we have an email from William Pedersen, project manager from United Way, request for United Way Road Tour sponsorship. Councillor McFadden.
Receipt for information.
Thank you. Seconded? I have a second time. Do I have a seconder? For a third time, do I have a seconder? Do I have a motion?
So they're asking for $100? No, they're asking. It's very tiny writing. I don't have glasses.
No motion? It's done.
Unless you remake it.
Done like toast.
So I'm going to move on to delegations we're finished with.
We have to deal with it.
Duncan?
I could provide a little clarification. So it's just, through your worship, it's $100 per community with a minimum at $2,000 based on the number of communities that they'll be visiting and advertising your community in those communities. So the minimum sponsorship is $2,000, starting at a companion. I think it's $2,100 to $4,199. It's on the second page, and it kind of outlines what you would get with that package.
Well, I should have received your information.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Schumann, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. McFadden, sorry.
Reports 7.1, we have report 18058 from the airport manager regarding the engineering design and public consultation of a runway extension. Councillor McFadden.
I'll make a recommendation that, or a motion that report number 18-058 from the airport manager regarding engineering design and public consultation of the runway extension be received. Further, that staff be directed to go to tender for the engineering design and public consultation process for the runway extension with funding made available from the capital reserve.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Wilbur, discussion. Councillor McFadden.
I'm just wondering, this motion calls for public consultation.
Necessary under the document?
So no, I'm just saying, earlier Councillor Parslow raised some concerns, and although I didn't agree to his motion, there's some issues in there. Could this public consultation include in some form some of the items that Councillor Parslow raised this morning? Is that doable, or is it within the scope of the motion? Or
Duncan?
So through your worship, we have not tendered this, and so we can include anything we like in that scope. It may change the type of company that bids on it.
Yeah.
Some of the companies that we've received some quotes through Patrick, I believe, could do maybe a lower level economic impact assessment and maybe focus on the type of usage that we're experiencing at the airport, in particular maybe some of the medevacs and the type of passenger service, if that's what council wanted to do. I don't know that they would be able to expand it as far as some of that passenger leakage in some of those other areas.
well, we have most of that information. So just a question, and I suppose if it ain't broken, don't fix it. So I'm not asking that the motion be altered to include that.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, I firmly believe that we, as a council, need to move from aspirational decision-making to data-driven decision-making. As I looked at the Tetra study report, it's clear to me a 6,000 feet runway is inadequate. That is why staff recommended, when we engaged with the 6,500 feet runway, that we didn't, they recommended we drop it because the 6,500 feet runway was going to entail some purchase of land. As I read the table on the supplementary report, we're told that the planes of the future will be Q400s, 70 passenger plus, 75, I don't know how many exactly, but 70 plus. And I read here that that plane requires 5,872 feet minimum for takeoff at 85% load and dry conditions. So this council is looking forward to a passenger service with a clearance of just over 100 feet. The way I read that data, okay, it's if it was raining or warmer or any moisture on that tarmac, this plane would likely not take off. Don't tell me we don't have rain events in July and August. Think of the fall fair not so long ago. Again, we're not data-driven. We're just operating on aspirations, which I understand. I wish the best for this community as well. But as a person who feels that we need to be guardians of the public purse, this data persuades me that this council should be going after a 6,500 feet runway. So I think you're wasting your money. So I can't support the motion.
Thank you. Duncan, can I just, did administration recommend we don't go to a 6,000 foot runway?
The only reports provided to council were regarding a 6,500 foot runway. Council asked for an updated business case, and Tetra Tech brought forward that updated, which has been attached to this agenda through a committee of the whole without a recommendation or without any direction for a follow-up report from council.
Thanks. Further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.2, we have report number 18059 from Development Services Manager regarding cannabis legalization framework. Duncan.
So through your worship, would it be acceptable for Alex to maybe walk council through this? It's a big nut.
Yeah.
Council has had very little discussion about marijuana other than the feedback that we provided to the province. And every day a little more information comes forward, and maybe Alex can walk council through this report.
Sure.
Okay, so all local governments must determine what changes are needed to ensure an effective response to cannabis legalization. This report seeks to understand the legal, regulatory, and community landscape before the cannabis legalization and to provide the steps that need to be taken. So the federal government has tabled 2 bills to legalize and regulate cannabis in Canada. Bill C-45, an act respecting cannabis, and the amendment to the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act and the Criminal Code. Bill C-46, an act to amend the Criminal Code and offenses relating to conveyances and make consequential amendments to other acts. With a planned summer 2018 adoption date, the Cannabis Act will create a regulatory framework for the production, distribution, sale, and cultivation and possession of cannabis across Canada. Bill C-46 addresses the offenses related to cannabis trafficking and focuses on the strengths of impaired driving measures. So with that, there will be different jurisdictional responsibilities between the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. So the federal government will be focused on cannabis production, cannabis possession limits, trafficking, advertising, the legal age limit, which has been set at 18, and provinces can choose to increase that, as well as the oversight of medical cannabis. So this report is only talking about non-medical cannabis because that is what we have jurisdiction over. The rest will be done by the federal government. In terms of provincial responsibility, the wholesale and retail distribution of cannabis, which I'll get into later about that framework, and the selection of a retail distribution model. From a municipal standpoint, we will have jurisdiction over zoning, which will relate to density and location, home cultivation, so currently a person can grow 4 plants recreationally in their home, business licensing. Just for instance, City of Victoria, City of Vancouver have quite hefty business licensing fees. Victoria is $5,000 and City of Vancouver is $30,000. So there'll be decisions to be made there. Smoking restrictions, which currently the public use of cannabis, this has been set by the province of BC, and municipalities have the opportunity to change it, is smoking cannabis will be allowed in public spaces where tobacco smoking and vaping are permitted. Smoking and vaping of non-medical cannabis will be banned from areas frequented by children, including community beaches, parks, and playgrounds. Local governments will be able to set additional restrictions for tobacco uses within their community. We'll also have the ability to choose how we enforce it through bylaw. And like I said, regulation around public consumption. And municipalities also have the ability to allow it or not allow it in their community, so completely opt out of this. So types of products that will be sold in non-medical cannabis stores, this has been set by the province, have to be federally compliant. The liquor distribution branch in BC will source dried cannabis, cannabis oils and seeds, cannabis accessories like pipes, bongs, and vaporizers. And the sales of edibles are prohibited at this time. It is assumed after legalization, these will become legal within 12 months. So just to expand the local government's responsibilities and what we have to, what our jurisdiction is, like I said before, we'll have significant control over non-medical cannabis. Local government support is mandatory for a provincial license for public retail. So all applicants will be applying for non-medical cannabis retail through an online portal run by the province of BC. It is estimated this portal will be open in spring of 2018. And it will be launched by the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch. Once it's open, the city will be asked to comment on applications. Local governments will be asked to indicate their support or lack of support by resolution sent to the Liquor Licensing Branch after a mandatory consultation with residents in the vicinity of the store. So it seems it's going to be a lot like our liquor, primary liquor application, where it needs an endorsement from council and the public needs to be notified of that change. Local governments will regulate the location of retail stores, including distances from schools and other stores. And local governments also have the ability to regulate the number of stores within city limits, or, like I said before, prohibit it altogether. Non-medical marijuana will be sold both publicly by the province and privately. Staff is looking for council's feedback on regulations regarding cannabis outlets. The recommendations in this report is the development of an implementation plan for non-medical cannabis. This plan needs to be focused on the regulations for retail outlets, public consumption, personal cultivation, and enforcement based on the direction given by council. This plan should also include a public engagement component to gather feedback, as the legalization of cannabis will affect the residents of Dawson Creek. It's very important to have this public impact in order to shape the development in bylaws and policies. The public engagement strategy will be, it's recommended by staff that will be consulted on the following: the development of a comprehensive regime regarding non-medical cannabis retail sales. It's recommended that a policy be developed that outlines the criteria that council will use to decide if they will support or deny non-medical cannabis retail licensing applications, to regulate cannabis as as closely to alcohol where possible. The development of a business license regime regarding non-medical cannabis, and to ensure cannabis smoking and vaping is prohibited in public places, and to define the regulations for home cultivations of plants based on provincial recommendations. The timeline for this implementation plan to be presented to council is May 14th, and that will include the goals and objectives of a public engagement component.
Alex, thank you. Duncan?
So, through your worship, as noted, we've had little discussion about cannabis and cannabis regulation. Every day, a little more information is made available, and really, we're looking for a bit of a starting point in order to take that public engagement step. And we weren't sure exactly where council sits on this, and that's why we haven't recommended going to public engagement just yet. We'd hoped to have this discussion today, talk about some of the key areas, understand council's position, and then bring back a report on May 14th outlining when we would have that public engagement and some of those next steps. We could do an incredible amount of work updating bylaws now and find out that this isn't where council would like to go, or this isn't where the public would like to go, and so this is a baby step, and it's anticipating further discussion with the public.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons?
I'd like to move the recommendation. The report number 18059 from the Development Services Manager, cannabis legalization framework we received. Further, the staff be directed to create an implementation plan for non-medical cannabis, beginning with a public engagement strategy that will consult on the following: the development of a comprehensive zoning regime regarding NMC retail sales. It is recommended that a policy be developed that outlines the criteria council will use to decide if they will support or deny provincial non-medical cannabis retail license applications. 2. Regulate cannabis as closely to alcohol where possible. Next, the development of a business licensing regime for NMC. Next, ensure cannabis smoking or vaping is prohibited in public places. Define regulations for home cultivation of plants based on provincial recommendations. Further, the staff be directed to prepare a non-medical cannabis implementation and public engagement strategy for the May 14th council meeting. And further, that the timelines allow the city to implement its regulations prior to the legalization date.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? Duncan, you want to say?
Yep, sorry, just through your worship, the only note I will make that is a little different than the provincial regulation is regulating cannabis as closely to alcohol where possible. This bullet or this recommendation just comes from our only previous conversation with council, where we responded to the province and said that we would like to follow that, and there wasn't a lot of discussion in that area. Where this differs is the province has said cannabis can be smoked as per essentially your smoking bylaw. This would be different. This would not allow smoking in public, and so there may be some discussion on that, or that's maybe council's intent.
So to me, the aspect everyone has to start to transition is for years and years and years and years and years, it's an illegal substance, it's a legal activity. And July or August of this year, it's going to be legal. And so first, we've got to get kind of our heads around that, and why would we not say we're going to try to restrict it and move to where we have illegal activities taking place that's a legal product now within the federal government and provincial government. And so I think it's absolutely the right move for us to start to begin to put the regulatory process in place and the bylaw in place for us to begin to move that forward. And the one that's the most difficult for me is going to be the one about public places, prohibiting public places, because I think that there's going to be a segment of the population who are not going to accept the fact that this is legal. And if someone is smoking marijuana, cannabis in a public space, it's going to be up to our bylaw enforcement people to have to try to deal with that. And I'm just concerned about the volume of what that could be for our staff trying to enforce that complaint-driven process if we restrict it from public places. And that's the only thing I kind of got in my thing right now is, not that I think it's good that they're going to be, could be smoking in public places, but the fact that it's going to be up to our staff to enforce it. And I think it'll be a significant one, because it's still a big a segment of the population that are going to have a tough time accepting this. Councillor Schumann and Councillor Roach.
Yeah, to be quite honest, I think I would feel more comfortable if we just treated the cannabis consumption the same as we are treating the tobacco consumption. I mean, we are saying 7.5 meters from doorways. That sort of eliminates, you know, most of downtown. We aren't allowing tobacco use or potentially cannabis use in our parks or anywhere that are frequented by children. And I think that, I feel that that would be sufficient. At several different conferences or educational workshops on this, over and over and over again, I've heard, don't put in too many regulations, because your public is then going to expect you to enforce all those regulations. So, yeah, we need to be diligent that, you know, we're protecting young children, et cetera, but I think that sticking to just our tobacco bylaw that we have right now for the cannabis would be sufficient in my view.
Councillor Roger?
Yeah, that's we're having the exact same conversation we had when we passed the smoking bylaw with the 7.5 meters. It was how we're gonna enforce it and everything else, so we're basically talking about the same thing again. I do find that most people that are even tobacco smokers, they're considerate. They, in this town anyways. But I think with the marijuana, I kind of got an issue with it. Maybe, I don't know why. But I just don't think that it should be, I don't think it should actually be smoked in public, but it will be. Because I'm not allowed to have a beer in public. So, you know, they're comparing the same thing, but that's a whole other thing. But I think with what Councillor Schumann said, if we just keep it the same as what our smoking bylaw is right now, and if people don't like the smell of it, there's people that will just say, you know what, can you just kind of put that out, or, you know, go further away or something like that.
It might be a great one for the public consultation, right, in terms of having that discussion and get the feedback from the public in terms of their views and input on it. And like I say, for me, it's more about the aspect of it's our bylaw enforcement, our municipal bylaw enforcement that are going to be the ones that will field the complaints. And that's my only issue. But I think it's a great conversation for the public.
By the time the complaint comes in, you know, that joint's long gone.
Councillor Sheen?
Through you to staff, does our bylaw spend a lot of time enforcing our tobacco bylaw?
Through your worship, I would see shaking heads, so no.
This one will be a different game for a while.
Well, it will be a different game, but I was just curious to know it. You know, if park users were calling in and complaining about people smoking in our parks.
It's, as Councillor Rogers says, it's amazing to me how considerate, for the most part, most of them are, and you go to the restaurants and you see them, they're all backed off, for the most part. There's always exceptions, but I think this one here is just, my worry is, what does it do to us as a municipality in terms of having, overwhelming our bylaw enforcement? That's the only aspect. Go ahead. Councillor Parsons?
Yeah, well, I think this staff has put together a package here that reflects the opinion of council that was given to the provincial government. If the opinion of council is changing, that can happen, but let's wait and see what the public says.
Sure.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Alex. Kevin, thank you guys. And who?
I said thanks, Tom.
Oh, thanks, Alex. 7.3, we have report number 18060 from the project manager regarding request for quotations for capital works project 15th Street from 105th to 108th Avenue. Councillor Parsons?
The report number 18060 from the project manager, water resources manager, request for quotations 2018/10 2018 capital roadworks 15th Street from 105th Avenue to 108th Avenue be received. Further, council award RFQ 2018-10 to Peters Brother Construction Limited for the contract price of $1,157,253, including taxes.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.5, report number 18062 from the project manager regarding quotations for capital works project from, now the correction here is it's 10th Street from 104th Avenue to McKellar Avenue. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Did we miss some? 4 or 5?
Sorry? Did I go past one?
I think we're on 7.4.
I went right by that one. Yeah, I don't want to do that one. Report number 18061 from the project manager. Councillor Wilbur, move it.
I want to do that one.
Move.
The report number 18-061 from the project manager, water resource manager regarding a request for quotations 2018-13 Capital Roadworks 13th Street from 102nd Avenue to 10th Street. Overlay and spot reconstruction be received. Further that the council award RFQ 2018-13 to Peter Brothers Construction Limited for the contract price of $732,984.72, including taxes.
Thank you. Second to Councillor McFadden. Discussion?
I like this time of year we're fixing roads.
Yeah. All those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. That almost didn't pass.
What?
You guys are all pat yourselves on the back and you didn't approve it. 7.4, sorry, 7.5, and this is the one with the correction. Duncan?
So through your worship, there is a correction in the recommendation. It states 104th. It should say Capital Roadworks 10th Street from 104th Avenue to McKellar Avenue.
There.
So moved.
Councillor Schumann?
I move the report number 18-062 from the project manager, water resource manager. Read the request for quotations 2018-15, 2018 Capital Roadworks.
10th Street.
10th Street from 104th to McKellar Avenue. Overlay to be received. Further that council award the RFQ 2018 to Peter Brothers Construction for the contract price of $178,889.29.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? You ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.6, we have requests for quotations for roadworks for 94th Avenue from 7th to 8th. Councillor Parsons?
Report 18063 from the project manager / water resources manager request for quotations 2018/14 2018 Capital Roadworks 94th Avenue from 7th Street to 8th Street, sidewalk, curb and gutter replacement be received. Further council award RFQ 2018/14 to Peters Brothers Construction Limited for the contract price of $122,433.03, taxes included.
Thank you. Second to Councillor Rogers. Discussion? Councillor Rogers?
Just one comment. I heard Councillor Schumann whisper 1 million for 3 blocks. Like I'm talking about all of these reports on roads that we're just discussing here, right? Or that I would like to discuss right now. Like, yeah, that's right. $3 million for 3 blocks, or $1 million for 3 blocks. We've got almost 120, I think it is, kilometers of roads in Dawson Creek, and here we're talking about spending $3 million on maintaining, repairing to 3 kilometers of roads, roughly. And that's not, and then we've got sidewalks on top of that. Like, I just really think that we gotta start getting a little bit utilizing that report that council had received, increasing the amount of monies that we actually do put into our roads and our sidewalks. I really do think that needs to happen. If not, hopefully there might be some money in this budget that we can take care of something. When I get people saying to me, I'm going for a walk, and actually it's my wife, we're going for a walk, and she goes, I remember when that used to be a sidewalk, and we look across the road, and yeah, the sidewalk's pretty much gone. I think it's really concerning that we've got to play a role in catch up.
And I don't think any of us dispute that fact whatsoever, but when you look at the costs of paving, and we're doing $3 million or $3.5 million worth of paving this year, and how little that seems to do. And as an example for the public, part of our budget discussion this year was to move east of 8th Street on 115th Avenue to water sewer, storm sewer, pave that street. That street from 8th Street to 3rd or 1st was over $5 million. And so that's the difficulty, is the immense costs attached to building and maintaining infrastructure is just crazy.
Yeah, it's that curve. If you do it like it starts climbing, and it's going to cost you more money if you don't do the maintenance today. And it's going to cost you millions of dollars if you just, the longer you leave it. And there's evidence of that with the recent melt that we've had and the thaw that we've had. There's some roads that are actually out there that aren't even identified that are just thunder.
But then as well, last year, $4 million go into a bridge that was absolutely critical to do, and there it eliminates the ability to do that 2 or 3 or 4 million in paving, right? Thank you. Councillor Parson?
Well, much of the paving is finishing off the approaches to the bridges. So yeah, I'm with you. We're just, the hole's getting deeper. Yeah, thank you.
7.7.
We vote?
Sorry? Didn't we vote? Go ahead, vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
We're looking out for you, Brendan.
7.7. Report 18055, water main services from 10th to 13th. Councillor Schumann?
Move report 18055 from the General Manager of Public Development Services regarding the invitation to tender 2018-11 10th Street to 13th Street water main extensions be received further the council award tender 2018-11 to Growcore Construction for $67,548.77, including GST.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Rogers, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.8, we have report 18064 from the Parks and Facilities Manager regarding request for proposals for Public Works Edition design bill. Councillor Parslow?
Move the report 18064 from the Park and Recreation and Facilities Manager, the RFP 2018/01 Public Works Facility Edition design build be received. Further, that Council award RFP 2018-01 Public Works Facility Edition design build to Kalmar Construction Limited for the bid price of $447,200 plus applicable taxes for concept number 1.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor McFadden, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Report 7.9, we have report 18065 from the CAO regarding our 2018 local government election. Councillor Wilbur?
Sure, I'll move that report number 18-065 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding the 2018 local government election be received. Further, that staff be directed to hire Frank Leonard to conduct a post-election council orientation session for the fee of $1,500 per day plus additional travel and accommodation expenses.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Schumann, discussion? Duncan, you want to give a little update for this?
Sure. Through your worship, as we near the election, Brenda becomes very busy, and we've laid out a bit of a table with all of the dates. Nomination papers made available August 13th. Nomination period September 4th to 14th. Confirmed candidates meeting September 21st. This is the meeting in which Brenda talks about the legislation and the financial reporting to the candidates that have confirmed they're running for the election. Advanced voting October 10th and 17th. General voting October 20th. The last council meeting for this term and this council will be October 22nd. We would have a proposed council orientation with Frank Leonard October 29th. We would have the council information session with staff and city update October 30th. Inaugural meeting November 5th, and so on after that point. Typically the orientation has been conducted by the CAO. I'm recommending Frank Leonard. Frank chaired the UBCM. Frank conducted orientation for council through UBCM. He has a lot of experience in this area, and we work closely with him through the ALC as well.
Thank you. Further comments, questions, anything? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7:10, we have a memo from Deputy Director of Corporate Administration regarding the letter of support for the Malcolm Friendship Center. I always really don't like to do this straw poll ahead of time, but sometimes the urgency of requests and get behind, so we had this request come through last week and polled council and got sufficient to move it ahead. So, Councillor Parslow?
I move that the memo from the Deputy Director of Corporate Administration, a request for a letter of support from the Narrowton Friendship Centre, be received. Further, that approval to provide a letter of support for the Narrowton Friendship Centre's application to the First Peoples Cultural Council BC Language Initiative Programme be ratified.
Second, Councillor Wilbur. And again, they were looking for a letter of support for us to do a grant application they were looking for and wanted a letter of support from them. Thank you for that. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Bylaws, 8.1, we have Council Procedure Bylaw 4374 for adoption. Councillor Parslow, Councillor Rogers, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 4375 for consideration of adoption. Councillor Rogers, second Councillor Schumann, discussion? Councillor Wilbur?
No.
Ready for the vote?
Yep.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1802, Bylaw 4376 for 116128 Street, Unit 5, Post and Row Tavern, for consideration of third reading and adoption. Councillor McFadden, Councillor Rogers.
Everyone.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Head Report 18054 from the Development Services Manager regarding sign regulation bylaw 4369 for public comments, and sign regulation bylaw 4369 2018 for consideration of adoption. Councillor Schumann.
Report 18054 from the Development Service Manager regarding sign regulation bylaw number 4369 2018 be received. Further, that the third reading of sign regulation bylaw number 4369 2018 be rescinded. And further, that sign regulation bylaw number 4369 be given the third reading as amended in section 48, 49, and 631 as shown in the blue attached bylaw.
Thank you. Seconded? Councillor Parslow. Discussion. Councillor Wilbur.
So I have a lot of different comments actually, and I do appreciate the work of staff because it's been a lot, but I don't think we're there yet, and I would like to get it right the first time and not have to, keep coming back and forth. And I think some of the consideration on the examples that were on page 3, we have to take into consideration how much snow we get and for that length of time and how that's going to affect visibility. An example, and it is a newer style, but I'll pick on KFC. If this particular sign was at the current location, it would adhere visibility turning left, and it would adhere the visibility of the drive-through. And I know we want Alaska and we want it to look better, but the properties are so tight together, and the room for signage is really limited for businesses, and I think if we move forward with this, we're going to cause bigger problems down the road. And I really think, I've got sticky notes upon sticky notes upon sticky notes. Another example with the electronic message boards, not the digital displays, but the electronic ones. For example, the one that we have out here in front of City Hall is actually obsolete. You cannot get parts for it anymore. They don't sell them. Technology's changing, and so I think that moving forward, we need to make sure that our sign bylaw is moving with that technology. And there's many different factors that we can do, but we also have to take into, I don't know anywhere in BC, maybe Alberta, where we paint our curbs red for a fire line, so I'm looking at the Walmart sign. I do know they do that in Palm Springs, and I do know I got T-boned by someone pulling out of a Walmart because they couldn't see past this low sign. So when I take into consideration our weather, snow, that type of stuff, I don't think we're there yet, and I can't vote to pass this just because I think there's a little bit more work we can do. I can go through every page if you wish. I have many sticky notes, but I really would like to just give this back to staff and maybe have conversations with them on just tweaking some of this stuff. So some of it wasn't about, some of the comments weren't about changing things, it was looking at things that were already in there, and because we're changing the bylaw, maybe we need to relook at that. So we want everything to look pretty, we want to be able to have flow through and all of that kind of stuff in our community, but I don't think we're here yet, and I think some of this is going to cause huge issues for us down the road.
So, Duncan?
So through your worship, Brenda, we're recommending third reading. We've received some, or we're going to receive some additional comments. If we wanted to have an opportunity to review those comments.
Table it?
It's on this meeting for adoption, actually.
Oh, is it on it for this meeting? So
Yeah.
we wouldn't, if council would like us to review these comments, then we would need to defeat this motion and bring a report back answering these questions for third and adoption at that time.
So I just Councillor Wilbur, so has this feedback been gone back through the public process, back to administration? Or is it additional stuff that you want to raise for the...
No, there's some additional stuff in here.
Okay, so what's your pleasure? We don't have a motion on the floor yet on the table to do
Yes.
for it?
Yes, we do.
Yes, there is.
Was it?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I second.
Yeah. Okay, so we then, the only way to consider it is then we have to defeat this. Correct. Brenda?
Through your worship, we would need to defeat this motion and then also rescind third reading if you wanted to make any changes.
Yeah.
to-
Yeah, because it's got to go back to first, it's got to get back to first and
To
second to
second,
make
that's fine.
changes. Yeah.
You
Okay?
can't just table it?
No, because we got the motion on for, to give it fourth, and if you're going to consider that stuff, we got to rescind third as well then, to be able to consider that additional input. Now, we've had a public hearing on it.
Yeah, the public hearing for this was not a legislative public hearing, so it's
Okay.
just up to council on the
All right.
consultation if they want to.
Okay, Councillor Rogers?
I just need to add, through your worship, Councillor Wilbur, do you have like a whole list of recommendations that you'd like to bring forward? Or,
I can't, at this point, I really just, it's on sticky notes because it's quite lengthy and sort of read through it, but I mean, there's additional information here. And really, I applaud staff for the work they've done. I just think we're missing some stuff.
So,
I just want to get it
yeah,
right.
and in fairness, council can't consider it, it's got to go back to
Yeah.
staff to consider that stuff. It's not like we have the expertise to, we're guided by administration, right? Duncan?
So through your worship, it is important that we get this right, and this is why we go out for public feedback to see how our proposed bylaw will impact businesses and impact sign regulation within the community. So if there is some feedback and there are some comments, we should respond to those.
Get it done right, not fast. Okay, so fourth reading. So then the process is, structure is, if we're going to consider that, we have to defeat fourth, we have to rescind third, give that back, get Councillor Wilbur to get that back through to administration, to have some consideration, discussion, and then bring that back to council for consideration for third, or changes. Okay? All those in favor of fourth reading? Opposed? It's defeated. And now make the motion to rescind third, Brenda, if we're going to consider it?
Yes.
I'll make the motion to
Moved
rescind third.
by Councillor Schumann, seconded Councillor McFadden. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So you'll bring that back then
Yeah,
through
I'll
person.
get it, yeah.
Thank you. Report number 18066 from the Manager of Development Services regarding manufactured home bylaw. Councillor Parslow?
The report number 18-066 from the Development Services Manager, remanufactured home park bylaw number 4368, 2018. Public comments be received. Further, that manufactured home park bylaw number 4368, 2018 be adopted.
Thank you. Seconded? Councillor Wilbur, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Mayor's business. And so this last couple of weeks were a couple of really interesting things. I got invited to attend the launch of a new container service in Prince Rupert, Yangming, and they're a huge Taiwanese shipping company that are currently operating out of the Port of Vancouver, but they're also moving into the Port of Prince Rupert, and they've got container capacity, and they're shipping grain in a whole different method, and it's using sea cans, and so they've got a loading and unloading component. And so they asked me if I would attend because the Taiwanese are really big on kind of this first launch and wanted to establish that relationship with us. I'd spoken previously with a company, Raymond is the name of the company. They're out of Montreal, and they do this grain shipping, and so I really like the idea of finding alternative options available for the agriculture sector for the region. And so I attended this launch of this container service out of Prince Rupert, and I'm really happy I went, and it was Vice President of CNs and some senior folks there. It was really good to continue to build those relationships. After that meeting, I flew back from Terrace to Victoria and met with Minister Dix at the invite of MLA Bernier, and Mike had arranged a meeting with the Health Minister regarding the Dawson Creek and District Hospital project, and we had a great discussion for about an hour, and the Minister was very forthcoming in terms of how and what they're doing in terms of all the various projects they've got on their capital list and how they're moving forward with those. And we spent, like I said, an hour talking about the Dawson Creek and District Hospital, and he's really appreciative of the fact that we've been patient, we've been waiting, and it is understandable for him to see how we need to get that hospital project on the list. He's understanding of that. The process they go through is first to do a concept plan of the new project. And that usually takes 6 months or a year of time to build that concept plan of what the facility will look like, what services are going to be incorporated into those, and what are going to be needed for the future, and all that analysis has been done, and the concept plan has been put in place. It was done in 2015. Next step, once they give Treasury Board approval, then which is the government approval to proceed with the project, they do a business case, a business plan for the project, which includes all the engineered drawings and all that stuff, and then away they go to tender. And so he said, we're not going to refresh the concept plan. We're happy with what we have. It would be easy for me to say we're going to delay the concept or do the concept plan again, because that just delays it. We're not going to do that. We're going to move forward with this project once we get the things in order that we need to for the government in terms of our budget. We're not going to leverage the Peace River Regional District and the money you guys have in the bank for this project. We're in, and we have to be in terms of moving it forward. So I was really optimistic in terms of having the meeting with the Health Minister and MLA Bernier, and that we'll see that hopefully the Minister will be here this fall. They start their budget process. I hope that at that point he'll make the announcement that they're going to proceed, and it'll get approval in Treasury Board and the government in February, like they announced Terrace and like they announced Williams Lake and all those other ones. So I'm really optimistic, as I always, I guess, am, sometimes too much so maybe, but it was a very, very good discussion with the Minister, and he was very open and frank about what and how we're going to move it forward, and appreciated the fact of the work we've done. He's appreciative of the fact that we've got the Peace River Regional District have almost the funding in place for our 40% of the project. He loved the fact we've got the First Nations, Treaty 8 Tribal Chiefs Association support. They like the partnerships we've got with the Peace River Regional District on their scholarship program and the mental health recruiter for physicians. Like, we've been doing a lot, and I think he really appreciated the fact of that. And I mentioned to him the South Peace Health Society that we formed, and all of those things to work to build health services in our community. That foundation of primary care is built on a strong, strong acute care model, and we don't have that. And if we're going to build a strong community, we need them giving us that project to move ahead and get the hospital on the books. So it was really worthwhile. About 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, I attended a meeting in Fort St. John with the Forest Lands Natural Resource Operations Ministry, and it was to do with the South Peace Mountain caribou, and this caribou herd that ranges from the Quintet, the south of between us and Tumbler, and north of the Peace Williston in that range. And they're a species that are threatened. They're not at risk. They're threatened. They're worrying about them. The science is saying the herds are declining. And so there's a bunch of work going on. Basically what happens is the Federal Minister of Environment has ultimate accountability for this. And the Species at Risk Act gives her, or the minister, authority to restrict access into an area that is impacted by species at risk. And what they do is they completely have the authority to restrict it from the perspective of habitat. It's not about predators, it's not about activity, it's purely around habitat. And so the concerns around the herd are that the federal minister may start to consider that. And if it does, it has significant implications for the socioeconomic implications of our communities in our region, and that's the part that we don't know is being considered at this point in the degree that it probably should be. And the science isn't really clear in terms of, is it predatory components that are impacting the herd? Grizzly bears, wolves, and wolverines. Is it industrial activity? Is it recreational activity where people are impacting into the regions with snowmobiles and ATVs and all of that impacts the species? So there's a whole bunch of work going on, and they just don't know exactly what it is. But it was a very worthwhile meeting. So we had a meeting with the South Peace guys here a week ago with Shaley as the president of the NCLGA. We'll get a resolution through to NCLGA for consideration at the floor in terms of ensuring we get to the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resources, and don't leave us on the sidelines and not allow us to interact with the discussion that goes on in relation to this important topic. That was a lot. Last Monday night I presented to the South Peace Oilmans. I gave a presentation on the oil and gas economic activities for natural gas and LNG. Give them a little bit of an update on the Ottawa trip. Spoke for about an hour with the industry guys, and it just felt it was worthwhile to give them a little bit of an update on what we're doing and what's impacting the community and region and what they can anticipate in terms of the next 5 or 6 months based on that stuff. It was good. Peace River Regional District, they're doing the facilities planning. Duncan, this is the proposal that the RD are doing. And so the Peace River Regional District, and it popped up on the agenda, it's one of the things they're looking at for the future is a new facility for their admin center, the old building at the Alaska Highway, and looking at the planning of a potential new admin facility for PRRD. I really think it's important, if they are considering that we should be tagging into that planning, because doesn't it make sense for us to have one municipal government building in this community to service the needs of both? Do we need a boardroom here and a boardroom 500 or a mile or a kilometer away? Do we need to have separate facilities for the operation of municipal government? So I really think it's opportune that we should engage with them in that planning to understand what it is they're doing and how and the plans for the future, to maybe see if there's a benefit for us to be coordinating that discussion and planning.
They need at least 50 offices.
Well, but I think, Mark, it's just from my perspective, I would just like council's approval or consideration that we interact with them and have that discussion with them and understand what it is they're doing and what their plans are and all of that, because that's all I know about it at this point. Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, I would move that we have those discussions with the regional district.
Second?
Be involved.
Yeah. And it's no more than just giving us the ability to and discuss with them and understand what they're doing so we can bring it back to council. Councillor McFadden?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So there's obviously over the last year there's been a ton of stuff going on our Rotary Lake, or not going on. Councillor Parslow had brought forward some months ago the request that we hold a public meeting. I had a meeting with Dale Campbell, the president of the Mile Zero Park Society, and they've got some information now updated on it. And so I think it's now appropriate that we start to set a date for a public meeting and a public hearing, so that, not a public hearing, a public meeting, so we can engage the public in the conversation, discussion, and update them on what we've heard and what we know, and start to move this forward for decision. Councillor Parslow?
I'd like to move your recommendation that staff be instructed to create a communication piece, including a complete timeline of Rotary Lake, with easy references to use during a public meeting, and that a public meeting be scheduled during the latter part of May, based on availability of the Mayor Councillor Parslow as Mile Zero Park Society Liaison and Mr. Campbell, President of Mile Zero Park Society.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Schumann, discussion? Councillor Rogers?
Okay, not pretty well liked. I don't really see any point in doing this, because is the city of Dawson Creek going to invest any more money into Rotary Lake? Or is it just to tell the citizens that we're not going to be investing more money? I'm not sure.
No, I think it's up, at this point, Mark, or Councillor Rogers, I think it's just about updating them in terms of what are the issues, what are the aspects, what is the public health hazard that's been declared by Northern Health, what are the implications of that. I think in fairness, we need to really now engage with the public so that they understand and get that information. And then council will bring it back. Council still haven't made that determination of what the future of Rotary Lake will be, but first step, we need to make sure the public understand what some of those issues, concerns, and have been identified within that material, and then it will come back to council for further determination and direction. Councillor Schumann and then Councillor Wilbur.
Councillor Rogers, I see this as an awesome opportunity to actually get the real facts of the matter out there to the public, and I mean, there's misinformation here and there and everywhere, and this would be a great opportunity to get the facts of the matter out there and hear from the public on that.
Just informing, yeah. Councillor Wilbur?
I just want for clarification, and I'm sure this is the case, that when we talk about a complete timeline, we're talking about from when Rotary Lake opened till to date?
Yeah, Duncan?
So through your worship, we've had some conversation with Jan Enns, possibly for developing some frequently asked questions about the orders and the position we're in right now, as well as a bit of a timeline on history on the lake. Obviously, you can't do a complete timeline, but some key events that have led to where we are today. First starting point for that conversation, whoever delivers that information session will be able to refer to that sheet to help people understand the decision that's in front of council right now.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 9.3, the Peace River Regional District and through the North Peace had been considered doing a housing gap analysis, a feasibility study for housing, for seniors housing, primarily in the North Peace, and had some funding put aside for it. And so we've jumped into that and said, wait a minute, we got this discussion we've started here in the community about housing, seniors housing, affordable housing, transitional housing. And I think they've allocated like 30 grand for the RD to do some of the study. And I said, look, we want to get in there, but we also want to broaden the scope a little bit potentially. And so that's what this is. The RD are going to take the lead on it, and whoever they gather, I want to get in there to make sure that we add some of those other components as it relates to that old Grandview School property, so that we make sure, because we were going to have to do that part of that housing, that needs analysis. So I think this is a really good opportunity for us to partner in on that. Councillor Parsley?
I'd like to move your recommendation here that the City of Dawson Creek request the Peace River Regional District to adjust their senior housing feasibility study to include a gap analysis for social housing needs within the City of Dawson Creek, and that the City provide funding for any difference in the cost of the study. Further, that Council authorize the Mayor to request a meeting with Honourable Selina Robinson, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, regarding partnership opportunities.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? Councillor Rogers?
We recently had a discussion about this, and it would be 20 years from now or 10 years from now, what are you going to do with all of that seniors housing? Because we're the bubble. And so, as we die, there's going to be all of that space that's going to be available. That was the conversation that we had actually had, was, it may sound kind of morbid, but what are you going to do with all that seniors housing after everybody does that?
And that's why you want to do that needs analysis and identify that, the data, the demographics of population and needs and what's being provided. And it's not just seniors, it's affordable housing, it's transitional housing, it's mental health and addiction. So there's a huge need there, and that's what this is just identifying what's being provided today, what isn't, what are the gaps, what's the future look like.
Okay, so for future, what does it look like? I really still believe we need to create an economic development zone around that property. And I'll talk about that at our next meeting here. I don't know if everybody would kind of think about that.
We've given direction that we're going to put that property towards public use.
Yeah, but if we create an economic development zone, we can do different things in that zone because we're restricted right now with the amount of things that we can do in that zone. We can get more funding for things that we do in that zone.
This isn't doing anything with the property. This is just doing the analysis of the region and the city. Anything further, Councillor
I
Wilbur?
just wanted to add in that, if you can mention too, in those conversations about living in place housing as well. So sometimes it's not about providing housing, it's about altering our seniors' housing so they can live there longer.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Fly the flag. We had a request under the delegations to fly the MS flag. Was it the MS for a month?
This month of May.
Oh, I don't know.
And so I just wanted to clarify that, Duncan, if that...
Yep. Let's take a look real quick. You would consider hoisting the MS Society flag to celebrate May as MS Awareness Month, and also light up the Calvin Kirk Center red on May 30th to celebrate World MS Day.
Councillor Schumann?
So I would move that we hoist the MS flag. I don't think a month is necessary. Maybe a few days, maybe some pictures for social media just to show that we're supporting.
The week of.
So maybe the
May
week of May 23rd to the 30th. And I don't know if we have control over the lighting of the Calvin Crook Center, but
We'll make the request.
make the request.
So we fly the flag for the week of May 23rd to 30th, and we make the request to light up the Calvin Crook Center on May 30th for the day. Councillor Schumann, Councillor Wilbur seconded. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That it for me? Mayor's business? Thank you. Diary?
Nothing to update, Your Worship.
Consent calendar? Move. Councillor Schumann, seconded. Councillor McFadden. Councillor Parslow?
I noticed that we're being made whole for just 1 year as it relates to the...
Yes.
So further $250,000 being lost. Yeah.
The total was about $230,000, and I think of that $230,000, the city residents of Dawson Creek paid about 80 or 85 or 90. So the gap for us and our residents next year will be about probably 140,000 funding that we'll have to find. Absolutely. And this is for, so just for clarity for people listening, this is for our rural fire protection 911 rural dispatch service.
Well, Jane, I just need a little bit of education there, because I thought the mechanism for raising this money from the city, right, was the regional district. So if the regional district are not raising it, won't it require some affirmative action by this council to keep raising that city portion?
It's a regional district bylaw that does the requisition.
Right, so if they're not going to be requisitioning...
They'll still requisition for the benefit of 911 service, but the amount for our residents goes down because we're not paying that $230,000. But it's a regional district bylaw requisition.
Yeah, I understand it's a regional district bylaw mechanism. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. So for beginning 2019, they will not be requisitioning the 249,878. So when you say we'd only have to find 100 and whatever, because the city of Dawson Creek people are, residents are contributing the 80, what I'm saying, as this is an PRRD requisition, the city would have to make the requisition for the contribution of the contribution of the city. Do you follow me? I mean, there's something needs. So there's a resolution of the regional district that triggers the leverage on the city.
They're still providing the service, the function. They'll still do the requisition, and it just won't come to Dawson Creek or Fort St. John now, who did the rural dispatch. It goes to 911, North Island 911.
So we'll have to find the full 249,000 to sustain our fire department.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, it's a big issue. That's why it was.
Yeah, $250,000 hit.
All those in favor of consent? Oh, sorry, did you have a question?
Well, actually, just regarding the letter from Houston, Dawson Creek actually put a resolution forward to NCLJ a few years back regarding human trafficking. And quite frankly, I'd like to see us follow suit and maybe pass a resolution similar to theirs. I mean, talk is cheap, and the fact of the matter is this is also a shadow in our community, and it's happening. I'm not sure that we did say we would pass a letter. That's why I'm asking.
I thought we did,
we?
yeah.
Sorry, through your worship, I'd have to go back and look through the minutes.
I think we did.
Right. Well, maybe staff can check, then if we did, I'm fine with that. I just thought it was a resolution we put forward, and here I see another community taking that action, so. That's all. If not, please let me know.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of the consent calendar? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Strategic priorities?
Nothing to update, your worship.
Question and answer?
The last time, I want to sign
For
up.
the last time?
For the last time.
Media
Someone ask a
questions?
question.
Do you want to take a 5-minute break for committee of the whole? 7 minutes?
Okay.
Councillor Parsley, you had one comment that you wanted
Yes,
to make quickly before.
Wayne Izzard, who attended the meeting, wanted to extend appreciation as a resident who lives along by the creek there. He wanted to extend appreciation to the staff who mitigated the flooding this just recently with the runoff. He says it's a real joy to live by the creek, except for about 1 month a year, where it's scary, but he really appreciated the most evident mitigation efforts that were made. And so he wanted to convey thanks to the,
That's
to
great
the staff.
Message, because I forgot to do that at the beginning, and staff did a great job. So, Committee of the Whole, our first report from our Staff Sergeant 15-1, and Sergeant Richard is on the bridge. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning,
welcome.
everyone.
Good to see you.
Well, I guess for March of this year, we've been working hard to curb the amount of vehicle thefts and break-and-enters in our community. The results show we've had some meaningful results. Instead of the double-digit vehicle thefts we've been experiencing to date, in March we were down to 3. And so far this month the trend continues, so that is positive. And because of the positive results that we're experiencing, we're going to continue our efforts with proactive curfew checks and monitoring of our prolific offenders, and let them know that we're out there watching them. Not so positive news, there's been a marked increase in frauds in our community of late, for various reasons. I'd like to encourage the public to be vigilant in making transactions, not just the public, but for businesses as well. And I'll give you a couple examples. We have a lot of multi-resident buildings in our community, and many of those are managed by people and companies for the landlord. And quite often, efforts are put in place, like the rent's coming out by direct deposit or by pro-stated checks. Well, we've been finding a couple of cases that people were saying, oh, you know, we're experiencing problems and we're accepting cash right now, so you need to pay us in cash. Well, people need to ask the questions and speak to the landlord. Don't just accept that information for face value, because that seems to be happening more frequently than it used to. Another example is businesses providing goods and services with taking the ID and personal information over the phone. Unfortunately, we can't verify anything over the phone, and these purchases and deliveries are made before the transactions are caught on a statement of any sort. So that too is troublesome. So please make sure you know who you're dealing with. And for everybody, just make sure that you keep your bank information to yourself. Don't share it. And just protect yourself. In March, the police attended 4 overdose files, in which 2 proved fatal. And for mental health calls for service, we pretty much stayed the norm with 4 apprehensions and 16 man-hours associated with mental health calls. In March, we took 42 impaired drivers off the road. That's positive and negative. We've caught 42, but that just means there's still a lot out there. People aren't getting the message. I guess that wraps up for March. To wrap up the past year, we've seen success in taking impaired drivers off our roads and targeting prolific offenders. We've had some major investigations that tied up a lot of time and resources. We've had several child pornography files and large property offense files. And as mentioned in the March report, our efforts to curb vehicle thefts that we initiated last year seem to be paying off with a marked decline. So we're going to continue our efforts in that front. Members are working hard to gather intelligence to tackle organized crime and drug trafficking in our community, and their efforts will continue in the year ahead. Over the weekend, our members stopped the vehicle, received a large quantity of drugs, and seized some cash. So it's still, the work is still being done. Just wanted to let you guys know that. This past year's we've taken a bit of hit in our resources last year, but we've got 3 recruits with boots on the ground now. So within a few months, they'll be up and running. There's a plan in place to have vacant positions at all levels filled, and the detachment fully staffed in the near future. And that too will allow us to initiate even more proactive measures to keep our community safe.
Thanks, Mike. Councillor Schumann?
So I know you guys are focused on several things, and all of those things are really great. I have been noticing so much phone use with drivers. The other day I was following one down Alaska Avenue, a big pickup truck pulling a big horse trailer. It was seeming like it seemed like I should get past this guy because he seemed to be not paying very much good attention. And when I went by on the phone, he was. And so I know you guys are focused on a lot of things, very important things for our community. What is the focus on the distracted driving? I always think, where are the cops when you need them? Like, you drive down the streets and everybody's on the phone, or nobody seems to be getting this message, and I don't know.
No, I see it too. As part of our annual performance plan, our members are tasked each quarter with making contacts, doing road checks, stuff like that. And part of that is distracted driving. And when those things are observed, violation tickets are issued. We do that on a daily, nightly basis. And those initiatives are captured in our annual performance plan. They're not on this report, unfortunately, so I don't have the numbers to give you, but they do it on a daily basis. Distracted drivers, they have they're not able to see much around them, but they see a police car, so they know when to put their phone down, right? So we do.
I wanted to arrest this guy. I thought I need to pull this guy over and give him a ticket.
No, but our members are getting out of the car and they're having spotters. Like they'll stand on a corner or behind a sign or whatever, and they'll call ahead they'll see somebody driving with a phone and they'll call ahead, and those people be pulled over. So this is being done.
Okay.
So.
All right, well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. Anything, Councillor Parsons?
Yes, where the new boots on the ground, where are they from?
Depot.
All straight from Depot, yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody
All 3 are from
transfer
BC.
here?
All 3 are from BC.
Pardon?
All three are from BC, yeah.
3.
All 3, yes.
That's it. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you coming in.
No, thank
as
you.
always, enjoy the springtime.
I'm trying. Me too.
15.2, we have a report from our Director of Corporate Administration. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I have a few highlights here from my report. The first item is in regards to communication. Council did direct staff at this meeting to hold a public consultation with Rotary Lake, and when I knew it was on the agenda, I looked into available times, and it looks like May 28th is the date that we're looking at for that. So just
Hold everything. May the 28th?
That's perfect.
you're one of the key.
I'm here.
Well, we're all here for a council meeting, so
I'm in lunch break.
Yep, I am here. Yep. Sorry,
They were only doing
I'm leaving the day after.
It's only those.
All right, so just that information for you. Another item here, grant writer. Unfortunately, Caitlin Treble is become extremely busy with her other employment, and she can't stay on as the city's grant writer any longer. So we're going to have Elisa help her ensure that all the deadlines are met for the projects that are coming up for NDIT, all our capital projects that we're hoping to apply for. So Elisa will be busy with that. Yep.
When's her last day?
June 30th.
June 30th?
That's unfortunate. And the other thing, business facade program. There was a question earlier with regards to landscaping expenses, and those are not eligible for that program. So just so you're aware, we do have a change in their intakes. The first intake starting May 1st. Businesses in the downtown core extending to 17th Street will be able to apply. And then beginning July 1st, any business within the town will be able to apply. And then the third intake, if there's any funding remaining, then a business owner could apply for a second one if they had a second location.
I had a request from a guy on 8th Street, and I said we were looking at extending it. I didn't know if it had been, so that's great news.
And the last item, we do have some expressions of interest out that we haven't got any response for. The Board of Variance, the deadline has passed for that. We need 3 positions, and I'm hoping that council can reach out to some community members and help get some interest in that. And also there's the Recognition Committee. We haven't had any response in that either. So if I could send an email out to you if that would help.
Yes,
with
please.
just a bit of an explanation on that, and then you could help out in that area. And the only other thing is I just want to thank the Regional District for sponsoring Sabrina to attend the Northeast Emergency Support Services Training Conference in Terrace. Just to help out with some of her training. That was much appreciated.
Thank you, Brenda. Any questions, comments for Brenda? Thank you, Brenda. 15.3, we have a report from our Chief Financial Officer. Good morning, Adam.
Hello. Nice to be here again. Last report ever. So things are going well in the finance department. We are being the guinea pigs for the electronic timesheets, and it is pretty slick. There has been a noticeable decrease in the amount of processing time, and it will only get better as more departments come on. In my report, I speak about a cash management and investment strategy. So the city, on a normal basis, holds about $20 million in total cash. This is all of the money in every single different reserve savings that we have. So currently, the cash that is in reserves and savings is held in a high interest savings account at TD earning 2%. There's a portion of that money that the city does not use, like the very bottoms of our reserves that we should actually never be touching, but they should be there for when the world ends and things really go sideways. The strategy is to take that piece of cash and use it in a higher interest earning capacity as a GIC. So what the city is trading is the liquidity, because the current savings account is 100% liquid, saying that we could take all of the cash and use it more with no penalties. What we do is we trade some of that liquidity for restrictions for a 1-year term, which in turn the banks can give us a higher rate on that cash held. So I've made a graph or a table here showing the difference. It's a 0.7% spread between what we're earning and what I've been able to secure. So in a given year, on the $5 million that I have needed to be a reasonable and safe amount to put into the investment strategy. It's an additional $35,000 in revenue by doing very little. Yeah, and that returns year over year. As hopefully our reserves and cash balances increase over the years to match our total capital assets in the capital plan, we can address how much can be used in this strategy and change it. And if we're finding we're dipping into reserves and we can't sustain this model, the strategy of going in is you don't put all the money in all in one day, so you lock up your $5 million at once. You do a laddered strategy, so do $1 million every 2 months, and then as the year passes, next year, you have the funding freeing up every 2 months again. And I would hope this method continues on and the replacement mean continues to seek out these small little efficiencies and strategies to get extra funding to help out that doesn't restrict what the city can do, which is key. The goal of this is that the money will stay in British Columbia institutions. There was some opportunity to go into Saskatchewan and Alberta. I decided I don't like that. And if the money's going to go somewhere, it's going to stay within BC because of where we're situated, our governance, and the provincial protection of credit unions. Good. That's my report.
Thank you, Adam. Questions? Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, thanks for doing that, Adam. One question about the budget cycle.
Yes.
So way I read that, that investigation is going to continue with whoever's your replacement. Okay, good.
So with the election, it does push moving the budget cycle forward back again because of the timing of getting everybody oriented and getting settled. We did notice with the tenders that just went out, and we already have them back, our budgeted amounts compared to what the tenders came in at, we've already seen some savings. So as this new methodology moves forward, we can hopefully get those tenders out sooner and realize those savings earlier, which will translate into making budget changes today for the 2018 year, or the current year we're working on. So we don't have to budget as high, but then once we have that tender, we can reallocate that gap that we're worked into it. So
Yeah.
it's a very useful thing.
Yeah, that was when I started digging into that. That was one of the advantages stated by other municipalities for why they do what they do. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything further? Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Report from the General Manager of Community Services. Good morning, lady and gentlemen.
Good morning. There's a way so we get to present to the cow. So we're going to start with Peter with energy and recycling.
Sure. So we've got a number of great energy efficiency projects this year, mostly around LED lights, sensor controls, some mechanical equipment controls, some of the city buildings that we're going to be focusing on this year. Calvin Crook, Public Works, curling rink, signage lighting at the Encana Events Center. We are looking at studying the wastewater system. There's an opportunity to add some variable speed drives and controls and reduce our consumption a lot there. City Hall solar, again, we're moving forward to get the solar array back in action. It's been down for a while. And we've got some low carbon electrification opportunities that BC Hydro is introducing to all their partners in energy management that we're looking forward to hearing some details about this spring. And finally, the Climate Risk Network. We've attached a copy of the word cloud that was done in Fort St. John. It shows some of the concerns in the community there. One of the big concerns in the last 3 years has been fires. One of the big concerns going forward is drought. It'll be interesting next year when they come down here to hear what our community has to say about that. I have a feeling flooding will probably be one of the items on our agenda. And finally, curbside recycling. We are looking at updating the waste collection disposal bylaw, and we want to make sure that we give a little bit of attention to how it affects some of the mobile home parks and gated communities and things like that.
Sorry, so just to jump in on that, Peter was brief. So as part of the recycling program and implementing that program, that bylaw needs to be updated. Some of the questions that have come forward that will have to be addressed through that bylaw are in regards to strata properties, mobile home parks, apartments, and what that looks like. And through that bylaw, staff will provide recommendations of how the program is delivered and how those particular areas will be impacted. As we've worked through the numbers, we do have some commercial users as well at this time. I think 66 commercial users utilize the city curbside solid waste removal, and that will also have to be included in that bylaw and how we address that.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, so when you're talking about the stratas, will there be a way to include them? I know that so many of them are senior citizens. I think you have to actually be a senior citizen to live in those stratas, some of them. And they were some of them were the ones calling very, very loudly for curbside recycling.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned that they're going to be left out of it.
So through our sphere of jurisdiction, Brenda went through the community charter and reviewed our abilities and our spheres of jurisdiction in these areas. Recycling is included with solid waste. We currently have a bylaw that says you need solid waste pickup from the city, or you need to show that you are receiving solid waste removal through a contractor, and proof is through an invoice. Yeah, through Big Bin, essentially. So we're going to have to look at that language and how that would apply to recycling. We have a bit of a mix right now where we have some just using gated communities as an example. You have some that have commercial bins, and you have others that utilize solid waste removal through the city. And similar with commercial business, you have some that utilize that removal from the city, and others that have commercial bins as well. So that will all have to be addressed within the bylaw. And right now, we're looking at places like Fort St. John, and Poos, and some of these communities that have recently implemented this, just to see what that looks like.
Follow up. Okay, so I'm not a part of the strata, and I don't necessarily know how they're organized, but the people that live within that strata are the people that control what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not utilizing city services, as a strata council or whatever, they could change it. Is that how it works?
They currently have their own model of how they handle their waste. So they either have a large commercial container, or they each get, and that's determined by them. That's their choice.
Right?
That's their choice. Yeah.
Through our bylaw, they can choose.
They can choose.
Oh, okay.
Through our bylaw allows them that opportunity to choose, and we're going to update that bylaw, and these are some of the decision points council will have regarding recycle bins.
Okay, all right. So to answer the lady who says, "Oh my gosh, we're not going to get it," I said to her, "Well, isn't that your guys' decision to choose how you do it?"
So just the last piece on this, there's a number of different avenues council could choose. You could decide that recycling is important in the community, and similar to solid waste, you need to show that you have a commercial organization picking up your recycling. If you aren't using the city, that's pretty high standards of what we're finding with the other municipalities. Most municipalities are indicating that if you are receiving solid, I keep calling it solid waste removal, but if you're receiving that service from the city, then you will also receive recycling. And if you're not going to receive that waste service from the city, you need to have a commercial bin, which can be as expensive as $60 a bin.
Thanks. Thank you.
So I've got.
Go ahead. Sorry, Councillor Parsley.
Yeah. So I'm pleased to see the solar array on the city roof is going to be brought back into action. Anything on the horizon with the federal funding? Remember, like a la Hudson's Hope, have you seen anything that says that that money has been released or is going to be released?
There is a preliminary release of that money, and we are looking at that in conjunction with the study of the wastewater treatment site. It's looking like that's our best bet for accessing those senior government funds at this point. So as part of that project, we'll be looking at solar and doing the analysis and quite possibly applying for the funding.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
So let's give an update on Sudeten Hall. Sorry, working with Force Engineering Hagee Construction, the majority of the work recommended to mitigate further movement and deterioration has been completed at this time. Staff and Force Engineering will continue to monitor Sudeten Hall on a regular basis. The other area that we just wanted to talk about too, just so you guys are aware, is the sports fields. So the sports fields, the soccer fields will open up today. The ball diamonds will be opening up tomorrow, and the minor ball fields will not be opening up, and we'll continue on monitoring them till we can open up. But April 18th, when we had our user meeting, we would have never thought that we would have been here. So with Mother Nature and the great park staff, they got everything ready to start on time. So thank you very much to that park staff for working and making that happen. Another area we just want to say is, yeah, that's good. The day of mourning, we just want to make sure we thank Mal and the group. Everyone got together to make sure that it happened. It was great to see council and that there, and we did have a chef to help us this year. So thanks to Regan King for helping us with preparation. A few little events that we want to talk about too is May 10th is Move to Health Day. You guys know about the swap and shop on May 12th and the cleanup. May 14th and 15th is the senior yard waste pickup. May 26th is our park and play event that's going to be at Kitchen Park with weather permitting. May 28th to June 3rd is going to be bike to work and school week. So I'll be challenging Councillor Rogers and myself to be riding to work on our bikes. And so.
It only takes a couple hours.
I'm racing.
Okay, anyway, that's just the update that we have with this cow report. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Anything further for Ante or Peter? Councillor Wilbur?
Can you tell us more about the Give It a Try 55 plus senior games event?
We sure can. It's a grant through the British Columbia Parks and Recreation, and so what it is to get seniors out to learn to be part of the senior games. So that event is we're working with Mrs. O'Reilly. She's going to take over the swimming portion, and then we'll have a variety of different activity, cribbage, and that will be happening to try to promote senior games in our community. So that's what that is about. Aaron Oliver is the person who applied for the grant, so it's awesome, something new for us to have, and doesn't cost us a thing.
It's nice to see all the age dynamics.
Is there anything in there that would senior game for like driving a car, part of the game?
Not right at this point.
Councillor Rogers is gonna have a little buggy on the back of his bike. He said he's in.
I've signed up. I'm not gonna tell you what I'm doing, but just in case you want to know, they have hearts, cribbage, whisk.
Yes.
If you're interested.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 15.5, we have a report from our General Manager of Development Services. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. I don't want to keep you from lunch, so it won't be too long. What to talk about, eh? So we've had a busy little bit of time over the last week. As everyone's well aware, we had some challenges with runoff, which in my time with the city, which has been 22 years, it's the first time that I'm aware of that during spring runoff that we've had any sort of high water concerns, and especially running over 17th Street. So although, looking at it, we weren't terribly surprised with the extended winter, the amount of snow we had, the lack of any form of melt throughout the winter, which we typically do see, and then the quick change to warm temperatures. So, but thankfully, I don't believe anybody's property was negatively impacted. I think we were okay. And thanks to my staff for putting in some long hours when needed to deal with that. So interestingly enough, of the two branches of the creek that we have, the north and south, the south, which goes up towards Bear Mountain, was never really got, to a dangerous level. It crested, but never crossed any roads within our jurisdiction, and it was just the north leg of the creek that created the issue. And I believe it's because that leg of the creek initiates farther to the west, more out towards, you know, that TED service area where, as you'll remember in March, we dodged that bullet of snow that they got about 2.5, 3 feet of snow, and we ended up with, you know, 4 inches. So I think that certainly played a part into the higher flows in the creek. So, but things are in good shape now, headed in the right direction, and as you can see, everything's pretty much bared off. So, knock on wood, for the time being, we're moving on to another set of problems. As you're probably well aware, our roads are in fairly rough shape as things dry up. So we've got crews, and have had crews going for weeks dealing with potholes, but really until the water gets off the road, which now we see things drying up, will those repairs stick for a while. So we are going to be busy, and we hopefully will have a contractor for larger patches figured out in the coming weeks. Asphalt plants usually start around May long weekend, and we'll be able to get some of those bigger issues. I heard Adam speaking of some of the savings we saw in the tenders that we saw earlier today, which is great news, although I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because we haven't started the work yet. But I would suggest that if there's an opportunity that those numbers prove out and that we do have that gap, I think there's a great opportunity and a need to possibly spend some of that in some increased maintenance in patching throughout the community. So something to think about, and something we'll monitor as those projects progress and we move forward. But anyways, that's my pitch on that. The other thing to note is tomorrow we'll be having a conference call starting back up with the 10th Street Bridge project. Things have, now that things have dried up, the contractor will be moving in. I'll get timelines and that sorted out on tomorrow's call, and I'll be sure to pass that along to council when we know what we're going to do and when we're going to be closing the bridge and approximately for how long. So we'll be looking forward to getting that project taken care of. We were moving into a very busy period of time, as you saw with the tenders earlier, with a bit of a condensed or a later start with spring. It's going to be very, very busy with the construction side of things, but anxious to get that going. Other than that, does anybody have any questions?
Councillor Wilbur.
The sidewalk and stuff that was started last year on 17th, is that going to be finished?
Yes. Well, I hope it's going to be finished.
Are they going to get started on it soon? I guess.
Yeah. So I've asked my engineering staff to place that phone call as of last week and talk with the contractor and get timelines on when they're going to start. And I've also, well, a couple of things have changed. The contractor will remain the same. As you see, we've awarded most of our contracts to Peter Brothers, who was the contractor last year. We've made some alterations in the contracts themselves as far as timelines and some penalties to try and encourage things to get done sooner. We've broken up the projects into individual contracts, which allows us to set final completion dates individually, so that rather than having one large contract with a completion date late in the fall. So we're looking for some strategies to try and make that better, and so we don't run into those situations. But yes, we are going to be pushing that to get completed sooner than later.
Thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
How are we making out with 17th Street around Husky there with those roads repaired?
It's been pretty quiet. I've had some conversation with the project manager with BC Hydro, and I was actually going to follow up with them after this meeting just to get an update. My concern now isn't so much the road repairs is because, you know, it's dried up and things will hold tight for a while, is the incredible mess that they've left behind everywhere else. The whole project site is an absolute disaster, and some of that involves us and some of it is other people are impacted. But, so I'm gonna pass that information and just find out. They originally said that they'd be here in May to do the patching and do that, but they've got a lot of cleanup work to do in my mind, so.
It's horrific in front of Husky, in the
Yeah.
corner of 17th and Alaska there, and on the other side.
It's awful.
All the way down by,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just one other thing, with it being so dry, nobody's actually mentioned the fire thing that's gonna be happening here pretty quick anyway, because there's 10 days of heat and dryness coming, so, I don't know, I keep telling people in Dawson, don't be burning your leaves and stuff like that, just take the compost, because they will run away.
Anything further for Kevin? The only one I would raise, and I talked a little bit about it last week, is Brookside Cemetery, and I don't know if that's you, Kevin, or
Yep.
Community Services, but, so we've got a concerned resident raised a number of issues down there for me, and we have garbage containers down there. I don't know why we have garbage containers down there, but they were overflowing, and so honestly, I don't know why there would be a need for garbage containers down there. I'd like us to look at that and consider that and say, if it's all it's doing is accumulating people coming in to leave their garbage there, let's pull them out of there.
Yeah.
The gazebos have really taken their toll, and the fence and things. So I'm raising it to council as well, that we haven't put anything into the budget, but the roads, to me, your cemetery is a good indicator of how you care about your community, and we really need to, I think, put that attention into that cemetery.
So those waste bins should have been dealt with by now. We were going to not only clean them up, but I believe they're going to be removed, so I'll double check, but that was supposed to be done.
Next year, that's a capital project to me, is the paving of the roads in there, and making sure that it needs some money.
Yep.
RV standing up, is that up and running?
Yes.
Water's on?
The RV sandy dump is open and running. The water, I don't believe is turned on yet, just because it's a little early yet for that shallow stuff, but it's open.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
So we'll
Thank you.
now move to recess to close, please. Moved by Councillor Schumann, seconded by Councillor Rogers. All in favor? Thank you. So we'll take 5 minutes